Fortune favors the infamous.
Which is such a cool sight. Man, this is so close.
Oh, just dodge that.
Direct hit. Look at the damage.
Oh! Devastating hit.
Stephen Lord's just punted.
Knocked to the 20-yard line.
There it goes. Duck falls back.
Oh,
coming in.
just bucked with
Just
the horns.
Welcome to the Everchosen Invitational, the 7th Everchosen Invitational. This is going to be your competitive multiplayer tournament held alongside a number of people from the community. What you're going to be seeing here today are 2 days of competitive multiplayer matches. Day 1 is going to be the round of 8, in which case everyone squares off in a best of 3. Essentially how this is going to work is we're going to run through pairs, they're going to play in their matches, and then we're going to come back in day 2 to play through the semifinals, quarterfinals, finals, the third place round, all that kind of fun action. We have a massive prize pool here today. I don't even know how much it is. I think it's like $40,000. It's something exorbitant. People are going to get a plane, they're going to get a car. I don't even know. But alongside me is Turin. He's going to be joining me through this entire 2-day series. I am Italian Spartacus, and we have a lot of fun planned for you guys. We have some returning champions in Falcon, Aerocrastic, and Loxon Susair. These guys have been here before. They're veterans of the Long War here, and all of these individuals have gone through a qualification system, in which case they've played on My Son Herbert Walker, or on Turin, or a number of other channels in a qualifier set of rounds. And they have all percolated down here today to the Everchosen Invitational, in which case everyone will be squaring off. Turin, we have some new faces to the crowd here, though, and you know a little bit more about the competitive arena, more so than myself, so please, pepper me with some of your goodness. How are things going to shake up here today?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is going to be interesting because this is the first time, historically speaking, the Everchosen was actually, as the name would infer, an invitational. But now the Everchosen does have an open qualifier system. So we have 4 players returning from the previous Everchosen. So that's kind of our current existing format. We get the top 4 players back from the previous Everchosen, so they kind of earn a spot by getting to that final echelon of the tournament. And then we actually have 4 new players who play through an open qualifier system. So we had 4 qualifiers. I held 1, Dob Plays held 1, Aerocrastic, and My Son Herbert Walker. So each of them had a respective champion who qualified through their open qualifier. And those are the new players you're seeing today, man. So it's going to be great. I think that's really a good kind of milestone and progression point to really kind of making it a truly open competitive tournament, really getting the best of the best. Right. I think each of the qualifiers had, I think Dov had like 110 people playing in his. I think that tournament took like 8 to 10 hours. He did a great job with that. And Aerocrastic and My Son both had huge tournaments as well. And it was absolutely wild. Now, one caveat, Hyale Nale was in the top 4 of the previous Everchosen. He couldn't make it to this particular Everchosen. He had some stuff going on IRL. So we do have a 5th qualifier spot. So we only have 3 players returning from the previous Everchosen, which is Lotus Moon, Aerocrastic, and then of course Tlaxlan Soothsayer. So that's it. And yeah, our first match of the day is going to be Falcon versus Lotus Moon. They faced off many times before, and you know they're both Wood Elf mains too, which is going to be really interesting to see what they kind of go about, you know, with the new units. Now, of the new units you've had a chance to play, what are your favorites? What are the ones that you just get excited to play, that you just really, you know, like hammering out, both campaign and multiplayer, of course?
Dude, it's those great Sag Knights, man. There's nothing more epic than just seeing a whole bunch of angry reindeer charging things down. Like, those things are big, they're mad, they're bad, they're mad, and they're mean. I mean, they are AP and anti-large, correct me if I'm wrong there. And they just look rad. Like, all the new units, I think... Yeah. Anti-large? Okay. Wait, they don't have anti-large?
No, they're not anti-large yet. Correct.
Oh, okay. Man, I was playing campaign and they were wrecking a tree, man. I'm like, they must be anti-large, and I must have forgotten that.
Yeah, they still can. They still can, for sure.
And the Regiment Renown unit is awesome too, because it's entirely ethereal. So they swap out that 20% physical resist they get from their talismanic tattoos over to being ethereal and getting like 80, 90% physical resist. So I love those things. Like, I think those things are probably the biggest highlight for me. And I didn't expect to like Zotes as much as I did. But what about you? What I know it's probably something disgusting and Skaven-y because you like, just haggard things.
Yeah.
But is it Skaven? What is it?
From a
What's
Wood
your
Elf
favorite thing so far?
It's hard to say. From a Wood Elf perspective, I really agree with your assessment. I think that the Lost Sylvan Knights, which are the ROR Great Stag Knights, are really awesome in multiplayer. Now, they are ethereal, and oftentimes ethereal units do trade a lot of HP and armor, but honestly, they only have 500 less HP than the regular Stag Knights, and you're getting 75% physical resist. Plus, there's some really cool combos with Wood Elves. For example, we have... Oh, no worries. We have the new Zotes. And Zotes do have flesh to stone, so even though you have a ghostly unit that one of the big weaknesses is its low armor, obviously, you can give it armor with flesh to stone for free from the Zotes. There's all sorts of really cool power combos. So for the Wood Elves, I think having the Glade Riders is also very nice, because historically, if you were a Wood Elf player in multiplayer, you had a couple options for diving into your opponent's back line. The number one option, of course, was using Wild Riders. Those guys ain't cheap. They're 1,100 gold. So now you can get something very cheap at 550 gold and send it into the back line and not worry that you're losing a very valuable asset. That is a huge, huge buff. And I really dig the Glade Riders, the Great Stag Knights. And for the Skaven, I think the characters are really good, like the Packmaster and the Brood Horror. That obviously Throt can ride. Just having Skaven mobility, and now that they have Wolf Rats, that really addresses the big weakness of Skaven. Historically speaking, Skaven, their biggest issue, of course, was the fact that they couldn't contest the battlefield. They were slow. Their faster units had like 66 speed on like the Rat Ogres, but now you have things that have 90 plus speed, and you can really get into back lines and cause a lot of problems, and it opens up a whole different style of play for the Skaven, in my opinion.
And I like how, too, like with the Wolf Rats, you either have the choice of being... They're both 550 points. You can go AP damage Wolf Rats, or you can go poison damage Wolf Rats. I think most people would want to go for that poison damage because it's going to reduce weapon damage, missile damage, slow things down, everything of the sort. But I like that you have the same price point for two different options depending on what you want to go against and how you want to use those Wolf Rats.
Yeah, absolutely, man. A really, really good point for sure. The Poison Wolf Rats, obviously, like you said, really good for kind of chasing things down, better against lightly armored faction like Beastmen. And then you also have the AP variant, which is a really cool mix-in piece because they have 31 melee attack, which is pretty high. So if you're able to get Wolf Rats buffered with like Rat Ogres to chase down Empire Knights or Knights of the Blazing Sun, they can actually chew down a couple models. So obviously in this matchup, though, we're going to have Wood Elves. Here it's going to be a Lotus Moon facing off against Felcon. So historically, the Wood Elves and Lizardmen, I would say this was a little bit... It used to just be Waywatcher spam, right? So, back in the days of old, you would see the Wood Elves just kind of spamming Waywatchers and things like that and trying to pick off the big dinos, whereas the Lizardmen would just be sitting back. So it is going to be Felcon on his beloved Lizardmen. So he is a Lizardman main, probably one of the best, if not the best, Lizardman player in the entire community. And Lotus Moon obviously is renowned for his elvish play. He's really good at all the elf factions. And I'm curious to see, oh man, even looking at Lotus's build here, you can see he's coming in with Zerthu, man. You seeing the big tree beard himself?
Dude, nothing like Optimus Pine to kick the day off, man. Just coming in with the Sword of Daith, looking all hot and angry. So he is one of the Elder Ancients, right? He's one of the Elder Ancient Treemen. It's amongst him, Sodil, which I know I mispronounced that, and then Aranhu, it's one of the other Elder Treemen. And the three of these guys pretty much run as the head of the forest spirits during the Sundering, when the Wood Elves, so it's like the High Elves, and the Dark Elves all kind of split around. What's up?
Is it like the Entmoot from Lord of the Rings? They have their like gathering in the forest and decide the fate of...
I mean, it's kind of like it, like the point where the Sundering, where the like basically Durthu says, we need to take these elves and we need to like harbor them, and they're like, a wizard should know better. Like, it is definitely that point where Durthu kind of forces the hand of the forest spirits, and it brings them all in line to eventually create what becomes the Wood Elves in helping out these renegade, or I guess refugee elves that don't want to go back to Ulthuan during the Sundering. So there's a lot of really cool lore attached to Durthu, and Durthu has been like a pretty awesome piece to kind of see evolve over time, especially with Sodil coming in the most recent DLC, Twist in the Twilight. So it's cool to kind of see both those guys, the last two Elder Ancient Treemen about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really cool. I mean, all the, obviously Durthu is here. We now have Drycha and Treekin have been buffed pretty substantially. We have an ROR Dryad. There's lots of cool stuff for the Tree Folk for sure that really synergize well with the roster. So as far as these armies go, I can go ahead and take a look at this Elvish army here. And for the elves here in the front, we do have the Deepwood Scouts with the Swift Shiver Shards. Now, these are a variant of Deepwood Scouts that hit much harder, but at the cost of range. So they have 135 range compared to the 180, I believe, of basic Deepwood Scouts. And you might be wondering, why are you not bringing big armor-piercing missiles against the Wood Elves, against the Lizardmen? But in this case, the Deepwood Scouts will actually be pretty efficient at cutting through lightly armored units, so like Skinks and various other units like that. And I would imagine the Wood Elf army is going to be getting its big armor-piercing through Durthu and also through the Branch Wraith. Now, for the front line of Lotus Moon and the Wood Elves here, it's going to be Eternal Guard backed up by what appears to be Glade Guard with Starfire Shaft. So these are the cheaper variant of archers for the Wood Elves, but they also bring really good armor piercing to the table. So those guys can certainly do some good work. And it looks like on the far side, we got Sisters of Thorn, which are an old school unit. And also in the back, we do, I believe, have the big, thick Zotes. Ooh, look at this. So we got the Arwar Zotes, which are, they're so cool. These turtle dragon ogres. Now, what exactly are Zotes? Like in lore, are they like a mix of dragon ogres and like tortoise, or like what's going on with those guys?
They don't quite have like a direct correlation like that. They're kind of one of those races that are removed from time. Like they're as old as the world and as young as the world. Like one of those weird things where they've been there forever. They are rumored to be as old as the Lizardmen, but nothing directly says that in at least the more recent lore.
Yeah.
And these guys actually, it's interesting to see them in our unit, right? Because in the lore, they're very isolationist. It's very hard to come across one, let alone many, a Zote. And a lot of the Wood Elf spell singers and spellweavers actually learn the lore of life from these guys. Yeah, that's what they see them they shoot those little balls in the air, little Giran magic right there. But these guys are very well versed in. That's why they're called the Enigmas of Giran.
Yeah, I had no idea. Zotes are, as far as their application here, I mean, they're a good anti-dino piece, right? Because if you look at the Wood Elf army, they have plenty of anti-light from the Swift Shiver Shards, and then here they get the anti-large from the Starfire Shafts, which aren't, quote-unquote anti-large, but they bring AP. Their purpose is to kill the big dinosaurs. And these Zotes are also anti-large as well. On top of that, they do magic dampening, so when they hit something, they lower the magic resist of that target by 22%, which synergizes quite well with their magic damage. And they have a free regrowth, which is really good for Durthu, and obviously do have 2 charges of the Flesh to Stone. So that is pretty much it for the Wood Elf army. Not too many new units, with the exception, of course, of the big old Zotes in the back. Now, what do we have here for the lizard people, man? What do you see? What do your elf eyes see?
Some it's the Blood Moon, it rises. So it looks like we got some Chameleon Skinks in the front here, which will actually be very good, and you can help correct me on this, that they do have range poison damage, so they'll be able to poison anything that tries to get onto their flanks very easily, slow them down, make it a little bit easier to either chase out or reduce their damage with that poison damage. Through the front line, we're going to be seeing skink cohorts with javelins getting additional range damage through that, and then a nice back, interesting geometry here with some Saurus spears and shields, and going with those shields to try and negate some of the range damage that is undoubtedly going to be coming their way. We're going to see 2 Bastillodons with solar engines pumping some hot fire down range, and then which Slann are we going to be seeing here today?
So it looks like it's going to be the Blueberry Slann, which is the high magic. Yeah. High magic.
And to be expected to, because you do kind of want high magic here, because you'll get access to Tempest, which will allow you to lock down any of the flying units of the Wood Elves. I mean, Forest Dragons are pretty deadly here. Apotheosis, the abilities pretty much to heal, and then the one that allows you to increase reload skill, if I'm correct there. And then it looks like we've got 2
Hand of Glory.
Skaven. Hand of Glory, thank you. And by Skaven, I mean Lizardmen. Don't tell Lore Master of Sotek I said that. But 2 Lizardmen Chieftain joining us for this ride. So it's going to be a pretty fun one here. We have an interesting deployment. I think that it's Skaven again. What the Chameleon Skinks
they're infiltrating,
are going to be interesting because they do start stocked. So they'll have the advantage to at least try and close that distance before they get overwhelmingly destroyed by the Wood Elf archery lines. So they'll be able to kind of close that distance and poison things and reduce the missile damage of things with that poison.
Absolutely, man. And this is a classic Felcon anti-Wood Elf build. I played probably about 10 or 15 games with Felcon this week, and I have to say, this is a build he brought against my Wood Elves every time, and I had so much trouble cracking it, because if you rush it with like light units, right, like Eternal Guard or Stag Knights, Wild Riders, you take just a torrent of fire from the Chameleons, and then if you get in, you have to then face a million stars with spears. If you decide to try and kite it, you have to deal with the Bastillodons with the solar engines. So it's a really tough build, and right out of the gates, man, you can see that the Deepwood Scouts are being pushed back by the Chameleons, who do have that 40% missile resist, while at the same time, the Deepwood Scouts here, or the Glade Guard actually, of Lotus Moon, are taking some pretty substantial damage from that poke.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Holy. And it's pretty interesting here too, what you were saying. Now, for the chameleon skinks, their unit density helps them when they're receiving range fire, right? When you take a look at the Eternal Guard, they're rank and file, they're close knit. So when they get a volley of arrows, it has a higher chance of hitting and it does more damage than, say, the other ones who are staggered, correct?
Yeah, correct. So the chameleon skinks are in a little bit of a loose formation. So, for example, if they're taking missile fire, since they're in a loose formation, like I said, they're not going to be taking as much damage. Whereas, like, tightly packed units will take more damage from artillery. It's a little bit easier to focus fire them down. Chameleons are basically designed to be a counter-skirmishing unit against this type of play, right? And they seem to be doing very well. As far as the early trading goes, if you look in the backfield, you can see Lotus Moon has already lost some of his Glade Guard with Starfire Shafts. His infantry is being picked apart on the advance, despite the Silver Shields. And now we got the big Papasaurus preparing to engage in the front, but the Eternal Guard appear to be pulling back
pondering
here.
Lizards.
Yeah. And now the laser dinos, the Bastillodons, are shooting into Durthu, it would appear. Manscore Summon coming down from Lotus Moon. I think it's about time he turns on the aggression here. And it looks like the Zotes also coming in on the flank, man.
Yeah, man, jumping right into those spears, and those SAR spears are all that exists to anchor the line. So you can see Lotus Moon is trying to at least buckle a portion of it, and Falcon is responding in kind by putting his chameleon skinks onto those Zotes, getting poisons on them, having them slow down a little bit, but also reduce their damage while they pour into those SAR spears. We got some spells kicking off right dead center there. It looks like, is that a Doom? What is that? Oh, a Curse of Anwar.
We got the Curse of Anwar
from Big Daddy Durthu.
And actually, we do have a sniping attempt as well. Here you can see Lotus Moon just going deep in this back line, man. The Zotes are trying to take out the Blueberry Slan, but I have to tell you from experience, this is a mistake I've made against not only Falcon, but many a Lizardman player, is trying to kill Slans early game, like sending a very expensive 2,000 gold unit back here to try and kill the Slan while it's buffered by spears. It's going to be a tall order. However, the Manticore Summon, also does give a little bit of punch in the back line. And oh no, Durthu, Treebeard's coming in, man. And you can see that this Slan is in a little bit of trouble. Yeah, he's sandwiched here, man. This might work out, actually. Who knows?
Yeah,
I think that the Slan will go down. What are your predictions?
Plenty of arrows being ripped into that Slan right now. Durthu's on there. The leadership's tanking. He's below 50% health. I mean, even the Branch Wraith is coming in to give that melee attack bonus with Call of the Woods or Call of the Wild, helping out right there. Everyone is pinning that Slan down, and he is just getting the business.
Yeah, it's definitely paying off. I mean, Lotus Moon has done what I failed to do on many occasions, and taking out the Slan Mage early is certainly quite valuable. And I don't know how he got caught so well. I suppose the flank collapsed over here, but there are so many Sara Spears, and despite the fact that the Blueberry Slan has gone down and has been feasted on by Durthu, there's still a lot of losses coming in for the Widow. So you can see the Enigmas of Giron are being taken down by spears despite getting Flesh to Stone and Scroll of Shielding and Regrowth to heal them up. On top of that, the Branch Wraith and Durthu are both being attacked by the Skink Chiefs, and there's still a lot of Chameleons. Despite Falcon losing his Lord, this is still a very, very close game. It could certainly go either way, in my opinion.
I agree. Like, both the solar engines, which do fire damage, are pouring into Durthu right now. The Skinks all have an amazing amount of ammunition, and for the most part, the Sara Spears are in great health, just like you said. So I think it's really going to be a matter of getting down Durthu, finishing off those Zotes, and then all you have to deal with those archers, and they're already below 50% capacity, if not 25.
Yeah, that is one thing that Lotus Moon really has going for him here is the fact that his Deepwood Scouts and one unit of his Glade Guard, actually both of them have come back in a very tattered state, mind you, but they have been able to focus down one Bastillodon. But the nice thing for Falcon is that this Bastillodon will come back, and he's going to start dropping some serious bows and just shooting downtown after Durthu and the Zotes. But the Zotes are coming back. The Regrowth was able to kind of stabilize them and help with their vigor. And it looks like Durthu is also stabilized, and Durthu is probably one of the best anti-horde characters in the game, having both Sword of Daith as well as Flock of Doom. This boy can do some serious work for sure. So yeah, it looks like it's just such an absolute barn burner of a game. There's still double Skink Chief too, and even though those guys are kind of unassuming, they have 400 plus missile strength with their little dart guns, so they are certainly more than capable of picking off Durthu over the course of a very long, grindy game. And also the Branch Wraith is running.
Yeah, we've said plenty of times, how much just the constant firepower from things that you ignore can really add up over time. And I mean, look at Durthu. When you had originally said that he maybe had like 15-20% health, and he's tanking pretty quickly here. And one thing to note, though, guys, this is an early access build, so some things might be changing here with the Zotes or any kind of stat lines from anything new that you see. Anytime we do these Everchosen Invitationals, it's always kind of a nice disclaimer to tell you guys up front that there's some stats might change come the final release on December 3rd. But he's running, man. He's getting licked up. He's very low in health. His leadership's dropping 1,000 health right now.
He's waddling is more like it for sure, being poisoned here by the little skinks and their blow darts. Yeah, and honestly, I feel like Falcon is, believe it or not, I feel like Falcon is, despite having lost his Lord, I think he's in a pretty good position, especially since if you look at the backfield, you can see this hero Bastillodon, who we shall dub as Gary, has come back, and he's got his lasers are back online. He's got 6 shots, which is more than enough to probably finish off Durthu. And Durthu's in Exodus here. He's going back to the Entmoot here. And also the Branch Wraith is broken, being chased down by skinks. And now there's just this wall of lizardmen just might here. We have a Saurus, we have a Bastillodon that's pretty healthy. And these Saurus spears, they are very difficult to break, especially when they're rampaging. And the Skink Chiefs still have over 50% ammo, man. I really feel like the Lizards are going to be taking this game here.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that probably Falcon's going to pull out the first win. The balance of power bar is shifting now pretty well in the favor of the dinos. It was 50-50 when you were saying it was a barn burner, so we're coming up to probably about like a 60-40 right now. Durthu's on his last branch. Oh, that was a bad pun. And things are not going too well.
That was good. I like that.
We're coming down now to the end of the ammunition for all of the Wood Elves, so they're going to have to start throwing fisticuffs. They can't run around at this point. They're going to have to start at least moving towards combat. Is that the rule? It has to have action towards aggression? Oh,
yeah, it depends. But Lotus Moon, at this point, the game is 100% over. His elves have run out of ammo. Durthu had died to the chameleons, and that's going to be game 1 going to the Dark Lord Falcon. Certainly no surprises there. I mean, they're both top-tier players. And I believe last time they met, Lotus Moon ended up winning this series, I believe Falcon was saying, in another community tournament. So he's back for blood, man. And despite crushing that Blueberry Slan early, it really just shows the tenacity of not only Falcon, but also the efficacy of his build. Now, we have a really cool new function here. We can take a look at the damage values that were accrued. So we'll take a look at some of the probably big winners here. We won't look at every single unit, but you can see this Bastillodon here was able to earn almost 1,300 gold back. This Bastillodon, 1,100, so great value there. And then the Skinks, 900, 243, 442, 718, and 947 respectively, with the little Skink Chiefs, 356 and 477. So really the big winners here were the Bastillodons, with the rest of the damage for the Lizardman army really being split. But man, this build is so nasty to deal with. I have not found a way to crack this Lizardman build, because with Wood Elves, if you try and rush it with infantry like Blade Singers and hard hitting, you just kind of get picked apart by the chameleons and the skirmish. And if you try and play missile play with it, then they have 40% missile resist on all their units, and the Bastillodon's blasting you. It's real tough. So hey man, take a look at Treebeard here. He did some pretty good damage for sure.
Yeah, man, brought a whopping 13,000, recovering 1919 in gold there for himself. How did those Zotes do? Coming in at a good 7,500 ground pound and damage as well.
That's not bad. They almost paid for themselves, and almost. Yeah. Then we had the
it's pretty
the sisters here.
The sisters bringing in a good 4,600 in damage. We had the Deepwood Scouts all doing some good 6,300. We had 5,000. We had 9,700. So you can really see that they poured out a ton of damage. And when you have units like the Chameleon Skinks, there's a lot of low value, high unit count objects that they can shoot at. But it's pretty interesting when you look at Falcon's build in comparison. Like, Falcon is someone who has taught me multiplayer strategies plenty of times, and he always kind of has that like ace up his sleeve. He always says, okay, here's my win condition. I need these things to live, to make it through, to do whatever I need them to do. And usually he'll have like that distraction Carnivex, that thing in there that kind of pulls your attention in a certain direction, so Falcon can use that win condition against you. And it looks like probably for this build, it was maybe the Chameleon Skinks and the Solar Engines to do the damage that they needed to do to get the win out.
Absolutely, man. It was a very, very strong build, and the players have actually already preloaded their second game matchups. So it looks like it's going to be Warriors of Chaos versus the High Elves in this next match, which is kind of an old school one. I don't know if there's been too many pertinent changes to that matchup, but I know Sigvald has gotten some huge buffs, and that's kind of one of the... Yeah, Sigvald got big changes, dude. He's actually a power player now. I don't know about in this matchup, but generally speaking, so Sigvald used to be kind of probably one of the worst lords in the entire game, like top 3 worst lords. But now he's like actually a contender.
Dare you.
It's crazy. Yeah, and oh man, did you see his new model, by the way, for AOS? It was pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh man, it's so awesome. Yeah. I thought you meant in this one with his cool new butt plate, but also the new Age of Sigmar one is pretty sweet too.
Yeah. In this, though, Sigvald now has perfect vigor, so over the course of an entire battle, he'll never get tired. He's just going to keep going deep, keep hunting you down for Slaanesh. And on top of that, he does also, I believe, have Heroic Killing Blow. He has Slippery, which gives him melee defense and speed. Sigvald being slippery is just kind of a funny thing. And, and then there was one other one. I think he still has like Stand Your Ground or something. But yeah, he is... I have lost many a game to Sigvald, I have to say, in the in the early access games we've had here. But yeah, Warriors of Chaos versus High Elves. Now, as far as this matchup goes, the big breadwinners for Chaos, in my opinion, are Pendulum, or Penumbral Pendulum. So bringing Lore of Shadows, High Elves, as you know, you played them in tabletop, are very tightly packed, at least in this game. So Pendulum is so efficient at taking out their elite archers, like their Sisters of Avalorn and Lothern Seaguard and archers and different units like that. And also their elite infantry that they often use to fight off Chaos. Swordmasters, Phoenix Guard, those guys are just like prime time targets for those AoE spells. But was it kind of like that in tabletop? Like, did High Elves usually play like very kind of rank and file with like spears and like shoulder to shoulder type play? Was that something that you experienced when you were playing?
Well, you know, the funny thing about tabletop is everyone played like that, right? You had to have blocks of units moving around. I don't think, though, that there was no like AoE buffs, you know? There's no like, okay, I'm going to put these 4 units together to try and get an aura buff on them. You usually had, okay, this is my high mage, it's going to target this specific thing and buff it. So you didn't really actually play like that. In fact, high elves in specific would either go heavy on cavalry, going with dragon princes and silver helms, mainly silver helms because they were cheaper and very effective, which is kind of the opposite here, right? I kind of think that dragon princes get a little bit more love and playability in Total War Warhammer versus what they did in tabletop, where if you didn't roll a unit of 10, you didn't roll with them. But for the most part, the elves really used the fact that they had such a commanding use of magic, where you'd use an archmage and be able to just rip through the higher toughness units such as Ogre Kingdoms or Chaos by dropping like a purple Sun of Xerius down.
Has begun.
Let's do it. Let's jump on in.
Yeah, sorry, no, it was very sudden. The players were ready almost immediately, not to interrupt the awesome lore there on the High Elves, but for the Chaos Army.
In the water. They're ready to go. I mean, Falcon wants to finish this one off, and Lotus Moon wants to come back, so he's bringing in the heaviest hitters here with the High Elves, and they're already getting chunked apart with those Phoenix Guard there. A big, heavy blast right into them.
Yeah, there's a Hell Cannon lurking in the back for the Warriors of Chaos. So aside from that, his baseline is Chaos Warriors with great weapons, which is pretty cool to see. It's very different than the very typical spawn rushes. And of course, it wouldn't be Falcon playing without a million skirmish cav here. So he's got Marauder Horseman and Throwing Axe as a heavy combination of both. But the Hell Cannon is a great choice because the High Elf army is very elite. You have Imric up on his dragon up in the sky. You have Phoenix Guard. You have White Lions. It's a very expensive army. So every Hell Cannon shot is doing brutal damage against those poor Phoenix Guard down there on the ground. And now we have the KFC god, Sarthoriel the Everwatcher, going fisticuffs here with Imric. Who shall win this duel?
Imric is going to dine tonight.
Yeah, Imric will certainly win that fight in a head-to-head. Yeah, another Hell Cannon shot coming in for sure. Falcon also has... Oh, Imric would 100% slap the Warp Chicken. Like, that guy would not have a chance. And also, did you notice Falcon's got 2 Feral Mancores back here? A very cheap, very meta terror-causing monster. But so far, the High Elves, have taken some serious damage, but now they're finally in combat. Do you think they'll break through that Chaos front line?
I don't know, man. I mean, they have a lot of stuff amassed against them. Though, see, the Phoenix Guard are really nice because they anchor front lines, right? They do have ward saves. They have all of these great benefits, but they're almost completely blown to smithereens here. They do have another one coming in to reinforce them. This is one of the few times where I would say White Lions do shine because they have that AP damage, but I think that there's just so many things arrayed against them in that pocket that it's not looking too good. Imric is almost completely broken. He's got Plague of Rust on him. He's being chased by the Manticores. Yeah. Like, it's not looking very strong right now for those High Elves. They're being surrounded now by the Marauders and just being picked apart.
Yeah, who would have thought Falcon would be here playing Chaos? And the cool thing about Marauder Horsemen is they can serve a really nice dual purpose. They can dive the archers in the back line, and also they gave some really big, heavy damage against Imric. Imric, of course, was afflicted by the Plague of Rust, and the Manticores were able to butter his bread super hard. And the High Elf Infantry, though, in a vacuum, probably would have beaten the Chaos Infantry line. So if you just line them up in a testing scenario, High Elf against Chaos Infantry with these particular units, the Chaos Infantry would have probably lost that fight. But with the Hell Cannon pounding them down, Warp Chicken using his various magic, maybe even a final transmutation we missed, there was very little chance there for the High Elf army. And I have to say, that was a very brutal showcase of the, Chaos has still got some teeth, even though they're an older faction and haven't, gotten a DLC or since, I guess, suppose game 1. It's been a long time. These bad boys still got some teeth. Yeah, they were DLC, yeah. They did well, man. Falcon really thought that build out. I think he was very familiar with Lotus Moon's playstyle, knowing that Lotus would probably come in with elite, Phoenix Guard and infantry and big monsters, and he was ready for it, man. Look at the amount of horsemen he had. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which are super efficient at picking off like big dragons and things like that. Yeah.
So let me ask you then. I mean, we know how the high elves are typically set, right? Like we know that you really don't have the choice for any kind of inexpensive AP damage in their army. So is the elite build the way to go against chaos, or can you do this wide as the high elves?
Well, it's hard to say because Lotus Moon is a far better high elf player than I am. So I'm not personally, though, I'm not a big fan of Imrik. Almost every time I bring Imrik, I find that he doesn't really pay for himself. I mean, if you look at Imrik's gold value, he got about 793 back. He got one really good breath attack right on the chicken's face. But aside from that, he didn't really pay for himself. And the high elf infantry, I mean, look, Phoenix Guard getting 235 gold value back is brutal. These guys got 340. Like none of the high elf infantry paid for themselves. They really just got destroyed. Right. And even the Fireborn, which I didn't even see over the course of the battle, I don't even know what happened to them. They themselves did not even come close to paying for themselves. But yeah, personally, I think they
were on the map. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that. I know we jumped into the battle a little bit late, but yeah, it was a brutal game for sure. I mean, the Chaos Army is very healthy. Both Mage Cores are like full health and did some pretty good work at sniping not only Lotus Moon's casters but also Imrik at the end. Warp Chicken got 1,800 gold of value. The Chaos Infantry did pretty good, 942, 618 here, 453 is all right in 5. But the Hell Cannon, look at this big boy, over 1,000 gold of value earned back against those elite units. And dude, yeah, I think going wider using like Techless.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no worries. And yeah, guys, our apologies. We have a little bit of a delay between our audios because we're using some fancy technology. So yeah, we might sound like we're talking over each other here and there. But yeah, the Hell Cannon did great. And I think the High Elf Army needed to go a little bit wider, like using Techless with some nets and battlefield control. Maybe some Lothern Sea Guard to counterplay the horsemen, that kind of thing, really.
Yep, I totally agree with you on that. So, in light of what Turin just said, we're going to take a real quick break here and fix a couple things. We're just dealing with the fact that we are now working across the pond. Before it was just Turin and I doing it in-house. So we're doing some quick little tweaking here to make sure that the next match runs a little bit better. So we'll be right back here, a real quick break. But we'll be back with some more competitive multiplayer with the Everchosen Invitational. Okay, we are back here. Loxlon Soothsayer versus Evenstar. Things are going to be a little bit different. We're not going to be talking over each other anymore. So, Nick, Evenstar, new person in the lineup here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Evenstar definitely had a really good run in the qualifier series, and of course, no surprise, was able to qualify. But now he has to face the two-time champ, Loxlon Soothsayer, who of course has been, I believe, if we look at all of the players in Total War Warhammer history and competitive play, I think he has the most tournament wins. Obviously, I'm sure with that comes a lot of pressure for him, but to, continue to win in these big events, right? But he has won the Everchosen twice. Mm-hmm. He had a really, really good best of 5 series against Falcon in one of the Everchosens and went to game 5. And he's had a really good run. And Evenstar, of course, had a great qualifier series, came in through one of the open qualifiers. I think he only dropped like 1 game in that entire day. He had a really, really hot run. So, yeah, we'll see how this turns out. It's going to be Tomb Kings versus Bretonnia, which is a matchup that used to be kind of like, oh, man, how is Bretonnia going to deal with Ushabti Grapos and all these cheap spears and halberds? But it's changed quite a bit. And Bretonnia has found ways to win the matchup using Thane Enchantress to kind of use her Mists of the Lady to drag down all the hordes of kind of chaff. And then from there, using the Paladins and Questing Knights to bring down the monsters. So it's a really fun matchup, very thematic as well, because don't the Bretonnians kind of get involved in a little bit of that desert action from time to time?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a whole big portion of the history of Bretonnia that involves the Crusades into the Tomb Kings land, right? And not necessarily specifically the Tomb Kings. It's more aimed at ancient Araby with Jafar, but it involves an errantry war with the Bretonnians and the Empire. And it's because of that crusade, the Great Crusade, that we get all of the more prestigious knights from the Empire. When we get Knights Panther, Knights of the Blazing Sun, all of them have their origins in that Great Crusade. Or you take a look at the Red Duke. The Red Duke was turned into a vampire by Abhorrash when he went down to fight in the Great Crusade in the Tomb Kings lands. So, yeah, the Tomb Kings and Bretonnia have a pretty heavy back and forth, especially when you look at people like the character, not Neferata, what's his name?
Nagash?
Ark in the Black. Ark in the Black.
Got it. Now, was that ever reflected in like a campaign in Warhammer Fantasy at some point, like in the really early editions, or was that kind of just like a lore tidbit that was like in the books and everything? It
was in White Dwarf campaigns that back in like 5th and 6th edition, they used to release a lot of campaign supplements. Like Storm of Chaos is a really good example of a campaign supplement where it's like, hey, here's rules for this, here's special units if they so decide to create them. But they're mainly through White Dwarfs. They would say, hey, here's this really cool blown out campaign here. Here are some characters you can use, you can create. Rapunzel Leoness is a character that comes from one of those campaigns, is a pretty good example of that.
Yeah, because in terms of lore, Rapunzel wasn't like with the contemporary characters we see, like the reign of Karl Franz in the Empire. She was like from a different time period, right? But they kind of like obviously brought her into Total War Warhammer for the flavor of it. But she was from a different time period, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. I think she was from the Great Crusade time period. I can't remember 100% off the top of my head, but she was from not the era that Total War Warhammer 2 is based in.
Well, now we've loaded into the battle, my friend. Would you like to look at the Bretonnians or the Tomb Kings? What is your flavor?
Oh, give me those Bretonnians. My first army I ever created was Bretonnians, so I want to see. I want to see the Battle Pilgrims in their full might. And Battle Pilgrims, I think, are a pretty good bring here, right? They bring shields to the table. They have frenzy, so they're able to trade very, very, very well into the front line of Tomb Kings, but you don't really need a whole ton of crazy units to do so. They have a pretty weak front line. Battle Pilgrims are pretty nice here. Some Peasant Bowmen with some Pox arrows we can see. Looks like we've got 2 units of those, and that's going to be nice to slow things down, so which is the big constructs that you're going to be getting in the army. Questing Knights bringing some solid AP and immune to psychology to the table, which is a very good call here. Knights Errant probably on both flanks is what it looks like. A total of 4 units of these guys.
Correct.
Ooh, one Knight of the Realm?
Yeah, so it's going to be, it looks like Knights of the Realm and Questing Knights here. In the backfield, we got double Questing Knight, and then it's going to be some Knights Errant. So just a super wide cav army, really, with the Thane Enchantress.
So 3 total units of Questing Knights, 1 Knight of the Realm for that anti-large. Then we got Knights Errant for some pretty good cleanup on anything that's got a low value, like a little bit lighter armor target. But why don't you talk about some Tomb Kings? What are the Bone Daddies bringing to the table?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of follow up on your comments, we have a little bit of time since these armies are going to be closing the distance, but the Bretonnian army definitely quite nice. Battle Pilgrims will lose the Tomb Guard, but if they go with skeleton spears and or cheaper infantry, they certainly win that fight. But for the Tomb King army, it's going to be pretty straightforward. We got skeleton warriors in the front line, which means there's going to be big expenditures in other departments. And you can see here we have double Necropolis Knight with halberds, which are the anti-large cav variant here for the Tomb Kings. Leadership kit is going to be Setra the Imperishable. We'll find out if he serves today. We do also have a Sphinx. It looks like it's going to be the Necro Sphinx as well as double Necrotech for the healing. It's just a very straightforward, just right down to business Tomb King build. There's not a lot of dynamic play in regards to Nakar horsemen, skeleton horsemen, skirmishing, anything. It's just move down with a bunch of big armored monsters, use your double Necrotechs with the restores, and your Necropolis Knights just to brute force your way through. So it's really just going to come down to who gets the better engagements here.
And I think that's kind of the name of the game very commonly with Bretonnia. Like, you can have these really awesome cav units, but cavalry requires a lot of micromanaging, and you have to really keep that in mind with as many that are on the board. That's really going to be what Loxodon Soothsayer is going to be spending the majority of his time with. But that is something he's used to. He's used a lot of really big mobile cavalry style armies before. We see that with his Empire, where he brings lots of Knights of the Blazing Sun. He brings Priests of Sigmar. He knows what he's doing here. So this is going to be fun here. You can already see the pox arrows launching into the Usef to slow him down, lower that damage. But you can also see those Necrotech with halberds jumping in there as well. And Necropolis Knights with halberds. A big melee in the center there for Imperishable.
Yeah, it's a big old grungy fight, and I was actually wrong. There were some skeleton spearmen or horsemen deployed on the edge of the map here, and they're now going to be jumping into the archer line here. So the peasant bowmen are going to be compromised for a moment, but the Knights Errant should be able to clean them up. And really, this blob fight is going to be the big determining factor. And you can see that Setra the Imperishable is taking some huge damage from the Questing Knights, who are currently debuffed by the Incantation of Desiccation, but it only lasts for a period of time. Battle Pilgrims have engaged against the Skeleton Warriors across the battle lines and seem to be trading effectively, but as far as my topical analysis goes, it would seem that the Bretonnians are getting a little bit of a leg up here as the Necropolis Knights are being worn down. The two Paladin characters with their steady anti-large are doing good damage. And the skirmishing elements here of the Tomb Kings, the one Skeleton Horseman I did miss, has currently been pushed off. So the battle rages on. Knights are being worn down, but it's a real close one, man.
I'm just answering some questions from the booth, it seems like. But that melee is really going heavy. I mean, Paladins are such a really solid hero choice for Bretonnia, right? They bring Guardian, they bring AP, they have so many great pocket utility, and they're very mobile, especially when they're on just the horse here. They can get in and out of combat. Yeah. They can get into that juicy center. You see Imperishable, or essentially Imperishable, is just dropping in health right now. So things are going pretty dicey over here as we move into the second stage, the final stages of this fight.
Yeah, Paladins themselves don't actually have AP, but they do have anti-large. So even if
sorry about that, my bad.
No worries. Yeah, I actually thought they had AP for the longest time as well. It really does add up though, this kind of poking, and also there's been some big mass changes. So in case a lot of people watching have kind of noticed, you'll probably see that big monsters have a little bit of a harder time pushing out of infantry and cavalry blobs because there have been some really big mass changes here. So the Tomb King's monsters have to be a little bit more careful. And also they're fighting more or less unsupported. Soothsayer is applying constant poison to the Tomb King's monsters. Poison no longer does friendly fire damage, which means that the Bretonnians are not poisoned. So they're getting a really, really big leg up here. As you look at this this big knight, is it currently poisoned now? The Sphinx is not. Yeah, the Paladins are doing great. Enchantress, of course, is applying her negative melee attack debuff to them. And it seems like Soothsayer and the noble Knights of Bretonnia are being the shield of the civilization here and pushing back the Tomb Kings as the balance of power goes into the favor of Bretonnia.
Yeah, we've had some big changes with this most recent patch, right? I know you were hinting a little bit about how mass works, but that overall changes how charges operate and everything of the sort, right? Especially when we take a look at stuff like the dwarfs.
Yeah, dwarves are a big winner as it pertains to the mass changes, because like if you try and push a Sphinx through or some heavy cavalry or a chariot through some high mass units, it's almost impossible to get through. It's very, very tough, which I think is a great change because single entity abuse has been kind of a bit of an issue in multiplayer for quite some time. Now, the banner rules and community rules that we do use for our tournaments have addressed it pretty well, but I think this is a very welcome change from Creative Assembly to add this, and it definitely makes infantry and foot characters a lot stronger. And as we progress through this game, you can see that Soothsayer is just pulling further and further ahead, just picking off these skeleton warriors, and the Tomb King's monsters are very much in some trouble here. Yeah, they're all very low in health, and the balance of power is really reflecting that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you here. It's just going to be a matter of time of just chipping off Usef and then knocking out Cetra, and that should be the game. I mean, when it comes to any of the undead armies, pretty much taking out their leader, for the most part, is going to just cause the whole army to crumble away. It was like that very much so in the tabletop as well.
It's not as bad for Tomb Kings. In my experience, Tomb Kings infantry, and not infantry, but their units in general, tend to have a little bit better kind of leadership compared to like zombies and skeletons of the obviously the vampire accounts. But you know, even though Soothsayer is a little bit ahead on the balance of power, there's still certainly a chance here for Evenstar. Evenstar's health is very low on his big monsters, but if he's able to get good isolation engagements, for example, the Sphinx is able to beat down a Paladin very quickly, which in a vacuum, this Sphinx would just beat the brakes off this Paladin, no problem, right? So if he's able to get a good isolation engagement, pick things off, Evenstar could certainly still scrap his way back into this game. Also, we still do have double Necrotect, so I don't know about the status of regrowths and healing abilities. Currently, Soothsayer is just trying to pull apart this army. You can see his archers are shooting here from the back, and he's trying to get an overextension from the Necropolis Knights, which he gets. And now the Cav of Bretonnia going to be charging in. Lance's Couch, baby.
Swinging in with that anti-large, coming in all hot and heavy. Fey Enchantress is in there. They got a Paladin in there. It is an all-in fight. We got a Curse down as well. You see the Chariots jumping in everywhere. I mean, it is all in it to win it right here in this pocket.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty good for the Bretonians, although their knights are a little bit tattered, and you have to remember the undead aren't going to buckle in the same way. Terror routes could go down. I believe questing knights are immune to psychology. I can't quite remember. Let's go ahead and check here. It looks like they are, so you can't terror route them. It looks like Cetra the Imperishable is going to be serving the lady today, as he's getting very, very low in HP, 354. And the Big Sphinx himself has a fair amount of HP, but there is a lot of haggard, unwashed Bretonian bodies here, and they're certainly excited to wrap up the Sphinx and drag him into the muck and the mud where they live. And yeah, Cetra's at 4 HP. Down he goes. Who would have thought the man of many titles, the king of the Tomb Kings, would go down to... I don't want to know what those peasant bowmen dipped those arrows in, but it was enough. it was enough to bring down Cetra, apparently.
Just go dip him in pokes.
Yeah, and look at this. Both Paladins actually terror routed, man. Those guys are running for the hills. Now they're back now.
They're back and going to do that little judo chop into Usef. It's really just going to be a matter of time of chipping these things away, and we should get a win here for Loxton Soothsayer. I mean, you take a look, though, he had so much mobility across all of these knights, questing, errant, realm, all of them. And it does allow for a lot of pressure. And that's something that is kind of typically the Tomb Kings game, right? When you have access to a lot of very cheap, very abundant, fast horse cavalry and chariots. It's something that the Tomb Kings really are good at. And it's interesting to see that kind of thrown back in their face very hard with all the Bretonian cavalry, because, I mean, you have to plan for it, right? You can't assume that, oh, it's Bretonia, they're not going to bring cavalry. So you kind of have to have some sort of insulation against it, typically either with the constructs or with Tomb Guard. So how do you typically kind of fight against something that Loxton Soothsayer brought? You know, what's funny is, I mean, Evenstar, had a chance of winning that game with his build. His build wasn't, bad by any stretch of the imagination. It just seems like the blob fight he took in the beginning, I think, really cost him a lot. He engaged into the Bretonian blob. The Bretonians had AoE healing. They had a Mortis Engine effect to drain down the skeleton support. They also had Miss of the Lady to lower melee attack. And their two heroic characters, the Paladins, were generating a lot more value than the Necropolis Knights, who were a little bit kind of bunched up in a bad engagement. Right. But if we look at Paladins, 1100 value there, which pays for itself. This other Paladin had 1357. Fey Enchantress had almost 2000, and that's largely due to her Mortis Engine effect doing some really good steady damage. So obviously the Bretonian leadership did great, but really questing Knights, 1100 here, 795, 864. Knights Errant did okay cleaning up infantry, and the Knights of the Realm also didn't do bad. It's just a solid build. And what's kind of interesting about Bretonia in this matchup is you can actually go Peasant Tide. You can go like only 2 cav units and bring like 1,000,000 archers too and play that way. It's relatively tricky for sure, but yeah, it was really well played by Sooth. He really just got the better engagements. Honestly, like I said, I think either build had a chance of winning there, but he got the better engagements. Evenstar Cetra did good. A little bit of value here on these guys, and the Sphinx didn't do bad also at 1800, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe going a little bit wider with Tomb Kings. Ushabti Great Bows are super good in this matchup. They can really pound down the Bretonian Heavy Knights, but that's a whole different style of play. Evenstar was going for like a bull rush with the Necro decks. Yeah, I was going to say, it was surprising to not see any Ushabti, either Great Bow or normal.
Great Boars,
dude.
Don't see them. Dude, imagine Ushabti Great Boars That'd be some serious stuff.
Rashopti on board is just going hot and heavy.
Just riding like an orc boar, you know? Oh my god, that's some metal stuff right there. So we'll be getting ready for the next game. I think we're gonna get Skaven. So this will, I think, be the first game today in which we've had the new Skaven played. Yeah, I don't think we've had him yet.
Here, you quickly speak while I fix some in-game sound.
Yeah, no problem. But we will be seeing the new Skaven, of course. And as far as what's really competitive in the new Skaven roster, I really like the Brood Horrors. The Mutant Rat Ogres are also quite interesting. And it's just so early. Like, I played Skaven for, obviously, this past week to kind of learn them so I could give you guys some insight on them. But I had trouble mastering, like, what was really good. I mean, with Clan Molder, obviously now you can play some crazy playstyles and get really aggressive and do some serious work in that regard. But yeah, it's going to be Skaven, and it looks like he's banning vampire counts. No surprises there. Skaven, though they do have some monsters, they still do have some trouble against undead, because obviously even their big monsters like the Brood Horrors for the Skaven, I think are rocking something like 55 leadership. It's not that much better than like Bretonnian men-at-arms. So even if their big monsters are surrounded by, you know, let's say skeleton spears, they could potentially break pretty quick. So it's quite spooky indeed, man. It's quite spooky indeed. So yeah, it's going to be Skaven banning Vampire Counts and Vampire Coast as well, which I think are both good calls. Vampire Counts still have a very good matchup against Skaven, and it looks like Evenstar is going to be picking Norska back. It's going to be the Barbarian Hordes, man.
Sorry about that, guys. Just really quickly finishing up the changing up the sound. I know that it was quite low. Taryn and I, typically when we play, our sound's quite low, so it doesn't overcrowd our voice. But since we're now using a third party with ProMod to help us out in this, they have said, hey, just jack up the sound and we'll control it from our end. So hopefully, if you've had any sound issues, we have now fixed it.
Fancy, man. So it's going to be Skaven versus Norska. Now, as far as this matchup goes, I actually did have some really good success with Skaven. What I did use was using Throt the Unclean. And Throt himself on top of his Brood Horror mount teamed up with a Packmaster, also riding on a Brood Horror. Gives you two really big, high mass regenerating units that if Norska tries to just go deep into your lines with like a Mammoth, you can intercept them using your fat rats and really get some good value there. So yeah, it's quite strong for sure. On top of that, you know, there's other contenders, the classics like Mortars. Still the big thing in this matchup, this is actually considered to be a hard counter to Skaven pre-DLC. Obviously, they used to just spam like Skin Wolves and things like that. And the Skin Wolves are anti-large. And on paper, they can destroy Rat Ogres, they can kill Hell Pit Abominations, they can kill Brood Horrors. So even still, Norska has amazing tools in this matchup. But I do think that the new monsters give you some mass to actually fight back with, which is very strong. And also, Throt can give anti-large to nearby allies using Creature Killer, which is very strong. So that can help defend off the Skin Wolves as well. But yeah, it's fun. What's your new favorite unit from all the Skaven stuff? Is there one that you've enjoyed playing as you've done a little bit of campaign, or it doesn't have to be like competitive per se? Gorich, yeah, Gorich. Big boy.
I really dig Gorich. He was one of those characters that he had a really small little entry in the White Dwarf, and then he had like a little kind of like afterthought at the end of the end times. But I really liked to see him. I liked to see him in this DLC. I didn't expect to see him in the DLC. And he's just big and beefy. Like, the Mutant Rat Ogre in and of itself is pretty cool and fun, but I think Gorich is just so awesome to see. Like, Throt the Unclean is cool. I've seen him in a bunch of different other games. Packmasters are cool. The Brood Horror is disgusting to see in the flesh. It's like a direct copy from the Monstrous Arcanum, but I think Gorich was one of those things where the only thing I've ever seen it as is a like hodgepodged, kit bashed model. So it's cool to see it envisioned in this big, roided out Rat Ogre way.
It's like taped together with like cardboard and yeah.
I mean, he basically looks like a Skaven Gazclaw, right? He's got like the triple claw too and everything coming at you.
He's really cool. Yeah, Gorich is interesting too. Like, one of my favorite aspects of him is actually his voice. He has like this like cyborg voice. You know, he doesn't like sound like a Skaven at all, right? Because wasn't he like a Khorne Berserker of some type, or like Archeon gifted him to Clan Molder as a joke or something? We trained him wrong as a joke. Like, I don't actually know the lore on this, but he was originally, I think, like a Norskin or a Chaos Warrior or something, right?
So yeah, he is a Norskin chieftain who was aligned with Khorne, and he's one of the only Rat Ogres that has a successful melding of a human brain and a Rat Ogre body. So he still kind of carries that sentience of his time as a Rat Ogre. So it's kind of a very interesting situation. We trained him wrong as a joke.
It's so good. Well, we need to take a quick little break right here, actually, just to check some setting that we're having. And we'll be back with the next game in just a second. So no worries, guys. We'll be right back in just a moment.
Yeah, I'll be right
if that works. All right. The mic's clear.
Okay, we're back in it. Locks on Soothsayer, Even Star. We're jumping into the game here. We've hoped to hopefully tighten all the bolts and all the nuts on everything with sound, with lag, and everything like that. So it should be a much smoother process. We're going to load into the map Schwarzhofen, and we're going to see how this fight kicks off here. Norskin's a pretty fun one. I know that Turn was doing plenty of extrapolation while I was fixing a couple things here. I've seen Norska being used to pretty good efficacy against large creatures, especially when you take a look at those javelins, those hunters with javelins or the hunters with axes. You can get a lot of damage downrange with them. But I know you were dabbling a little bit with this turn, but what would you say is probably the big thing for Norska in this match? Either it's
skin
a combination or what? Sorry.
Skin wolves are the big problem. Obviously a lot of people who used to play, I actually played against Soothsayer in the semifinals of a pretty, I think it was Aerocrastic Salad Cup a while back or something along the lines of that. And there was a massive amount of skin wolves brought. I mean, I think we saw even like 4 or 5. And I'm hearing a little bit of echo coming. It might be coming from you, Ryan. I'm not sure. No, we'll double check that anyways. But yeah, Norska typically just bans skin wolves, which are often called wind wolves. They're jokingly referred to in that matchup. On top of that, you do see mammoths. Mammoths are something that can really bull rush through a Skaven front line. They'll tear out off many of the spear units that are trying to defend and can cause some serious problems for sure. But brood horrors are a new aspect of the Skaven roster that can do pretty well. There's all kinds of stuff, man. But we are getting ready in the first battle here. It's going to be Soothsayer, of course, who currently is up 1 game here. And these games are all best of 3. So if Soothsayer is able to win this game, he will be advancing on to face Falcon. So they've obviously faced each other in the grand finals of an Everchosen, which is certainly would be fun to see in the earlier rounds tomorrow. But what are your predictions here, man? You think the old school Norska Mammoth Skin Wolf combo is going to bull rush through the Skaven, or do you think Soothsayer's got his tricks up his sleeve here?
Well, you know, it's interesting because now Skaven have wolf rats, and those things can actually threaten into ice hounds, and they can help to kind of at least harass the back line of Norska a little bit better here. You have the ability to pressure Norska in ways I don't think they could before. Typically, you know, when you see Skaven, you see kind of this mockery of defensive geometry, right? You get something that's very similar to the dwarfs, but it's mainly just let's throw bodies at this because we're Skaven. So it'll be interesting to see how some of the new dynamics coming in with Twisted and Twilight kind of lean into this. With the mortar, I think it's probably going to be the biggest thing here. We already see Loxodon Soothsayer with a Poison Wind mortar, and those things just do so much damage to lightly armored units because they just do damage over time. They have that initial volley hit, so it's going to be really a matter of, oh, and there goes, already launching down range.
Yeah, Poison Wind Mortars are hands down one of the best units on the roster here for the
Totally
Skaven.
agree.
And certainly, I mean, that's kind of the rock, paper, scissors of it. Use the Poison Wind Mortars to kill the Norscan infantry and javelins, and then to kill the Norscan skin wolves, you kind of have to get creative. Here in the back, Soothsayer does have Council Guard. He's got a Hell Pit Abomination, some of the new Rat Ogres, I believe. Yeah, he's got the Pit Fighters of Helm's Deep, as I like to call them, but it's Hell's Deep. And this is also another classic Skaven tactic, using a Grey Seer or any sort of a Plague Caster. And look at this. You can see actually the Chariots kind of getting stuck on those infantry a little bit longer than they used to. But you summon Clan Rats, you send them in, you let them get massacred, which then buys more time for your missiles to really pound home and do some serious damage. Aside from that, Norska's got Skin Wolves coming around the flank. Very, very common stuff. I'm very eager to actually see how Soothsayer is going to be dealing with these Skin Wolves here. Skin Wolves are flanking from all directions. And I don't know if these poor Skaven Slave Spears are going to be up to the task, but perhaps with the Hell Pit supporting, my friend.
Yeah, I think then that's the new Hell Pit Abomination. That's the thing.
Yeah, it is the thing. And as far as what it brings to the table, it does have the fluid injection. So it does rampage the unit, but unfortunately it does also, fortunately it does give it pretty big combat stat buff, but the rampage effect is kind of risky, especially when there's javelins around, but it does have better stats all around. So it should be a pretty useful tool. And now the frontline engagement is underway. Rat Ogres will be engaging with Wulfric, and the battle is on.
Yeah, it is going down. We can see Wulfric already trying to push through. He's being supported here by that chariot, trying to get a little bit more in there. Wulfric is just pushing through everything. I know we got, and there goes his I almost said it was a chariot. His Sea Fang, yeah, his boat ripping through stuff, but it just doesn't quite hit home or do enough damage to really do much of anything. We have another wind spell coming down here, probably the fire damage, burning skull.
That's a really nice
of Skaven.
That was a beautiful cast there by Evenstar. That just like tore through like half the health of the Council Guard. It wrecked some Clan Rat spears, and that was a beaut right there for sure. Soothsayer is getting his Poison Wind Globes, and they're doing good damage. They're getting good steady pressure. They haven't been interrupted. And currently the thing in conjunction with the Council Guard has held back the Norscan advance pretty well. On the flanks, we got Brutes of the Hound coming in, just being inundated by Skaven Slave Spears, but they'll eventually get into that back line. But so far, it's a very close fight. You can see the mortars are doing good saturated damage, and the Mammoths are a little bit pinned up at the moment.
Yeah, they do have Flaming Sword of Ruin down here, increasing that AP damage, getting that good magic and fire damage here. Assassin's Trophy, though, is also on Wulfric. That Assassin's looking to just take the head of Wulfric the Wanderer. And I don't even see where the Assassin is right now.
Yeah, I mean, the mouse hiding under the elephant, the classic trope here. He's sitting amongst the Council Guard. There are double Mammoths, so that's going to be a lot to bring down. However, the Hell Pit Abomination should trade very effectively here, but the real tail of the tape will be like, is he going to be able to deal with the Brutes of the Hound and the Javelins in the back of Evenstar? They're all still pretty functional, and the Skaven don't seem to be disrupting the back line too much.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, that thing can really do tons of damage to those Mammoths, but really it's going to be a matter of dealing with them. With the Council Guard pretty much out of commission for the most part, they're very low in number here, and with a lot of the AP anti-large that the Skaven can bring, they're just kind of being cut down right now. So I think it's going to be just a matter. That was a pretty devastating little poison wind right there.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll start to see that turn around here. We can already see the Feral Mammoth is starting to rampage because it is low in health.
Yeah, this is a great engagement here for the Skaven, able to isolate a mammoth in its rampaging state and then get the Hell Pit to beat on it. They also do have the Pit Fighters of Hell's Deep here attacking and Council Guard nearby, and more Ogres coming in. So certainly a huge pick for Sooth. The Globadiers here on the low ground are continuing to get some good volleys as well. I have no idea how these guys will survive this long in Norscan territory, mind you, but the Globefire is still coming in, but Skin Wolves, this is the big problem with them. You think you've beaten them, but they come back, they heal, and just generate constant value with that healing over the course of the game. But the Feral Mammoth is broken, but all this healing from the Norscan roster, that's going to be a big problem as we progress here into the late game.
Yeah, that's such a big thing that you mentioned there, right? With the regen, and regen on any character, either through an item or through an innate ability, is just so powerful. Like you said, you get the same thing with Norscan ice trolls, right? If they flee off, they can come back after they've healed up a little bit because they've fled, and now they'll get back into the fight with a little bit better health. If they don't lose any actual models, if they have the models they had when they started, they can come back to effectively full health. Yeah,
more or less. And it looks like the Skin Wolves, they're rallying pretty well. They're now attacking the Pit Fighters of Hell's Deep. So these are actually the new ROR Rat Ogres for the Skaven, who pretty much have the Norscan Berserk mechanic, which is pretty hilarious. So they actually Berserk into their cousins here. And currently Soothsayer, this is a very smart play. Obviously ignore the rest of this Berserk army over here and just go and try and take out Wulfric the Wanderer. In killing the Norscan leadership, I think it does give this Skaven a little bit more of a chance to get in this game, because currently, as it looks like Evenstar is in a little bit of a commanding position. With his Skin Wolves healing, his Feral Mammoth is back, he still has a fair amount of ammunition on his javelins, and on top of that, the bad boy has the Shaman Sorcerer back here and probably has some fireballs. Oh, this is going to be a big Sea Fang! Ooh, that was a nice one, huh?
I thought I was going to do even more damage. I really wanted just to completely tank that whole unit of Spearmen right there.
Yeah, it was close. Soothsayer had a really nice Matrix dodge there right at the end, but the Skin Wolves are catching up, man. The premier brand of the old world here. They're going to be chasing down that Grey Seer who can't quite keep up, and Wulfric is just kiting. Who would have ever thought we'd see the dreaded Norscan kite here from Wulfric, which is pretty hilarious.
The dreaded Norscan kite.
I know. The Hell Pit Abomination has 58 speed compared to 43 of Wulfric, who is currently poisoned. So the pursuit is certainly quite heated here. And the Grey Seer is just waddling for its life, but Sooth has to make sure he doesn't leave that bad boy unguarded. He's got to send some spears in or something, and you can see now he's doing that. You still there, Ryan? You good?
I am here. Sorry, I was reading chat from the booth once more, but I agree.
Yeah, no worries. So the Skin Wolves here obviously charge in, but when they're inundated with the Skaven Slaves and the Clan Rats, who are also buffed up by the Unholy Clamor, the leadership buff is going to keep those rats fighting for a little bit longer. But Wulfric is going into the can for sure. He's currently slowed from the poison. His leadership's at 3. Hell Pit Abomination. Not any mere Hell Pit Abomination. The Thing is going to be slapping him pretty good. And you can see he's down to 392. It looks like he's broken. And this is a huge play for Soothsayer. Killing Wulfric definitely gives him a chance to get back in this game. Whereas I thought he was in some serious trouble, just a moment ago. But with the big mammoth going down, I think there's some trouble afoot.
Something's afoot, yeah. So the Feral Mammoth here is just kind of waddling around, and it's really just going to be a matter of trying to get these big, huge objects off the map. Wulfric has just been completely collapsed. Their enemy lord is dead.
Yeah, he's down for the count. Some Skin Wolves charging in, trying to pick off the isolated Skaven Slave Spears. So as far as what the Skaven have left, we do have a Grey Seer of Plague, who may or may not have some summons in his back pocket. Oh my god, I think Soothsayer is holding the dreaded 13th spell in his back pocket. I think he's saving that for the fourth quarter of the game. Oh, that's so exciting. It's like the coolest thing ever.
Though. We've seen a similar matchup where the Skaven were against the ropes, and they used that 13th spell to just pop a W out.
It's the coolest thing ever. And the Thing is still very healthy also, mind you. The Thing I think has, 8,000 HP. It's going to probably get almost back up to full health here with its passive healing. And now a little bit of light skirmishing as the Norskins do throw javelins from a distance, trying to stay safe here. This is actually really scary, though, for Sooth. The fact that Evenstar's Marauder javelins on this side still have like a ton of ammunition, that could be a problem for sure. Scorch effect going down. The battle is underway here as the Hell Pit Abomination falls back from the javelin fire.
The thing about those javelins is, man, they can really do a lot of damage. They don't seem like they would. They have that kind of a limited range, but a Soothsayer is trying to pour out as much damage as he can to them. Ooh, a 13 spell going off right there.
Nice. Yeah, look at that in the back. And a lot of people don't know this, but the dreaded 13th spell actually does damage on impact. So these Stormvermin Halberds are now going to be waddling over to the engagement. And with that, Soothsayer actually does pull ahead on the bounce of power. The thing does have the fluid injection. Look at this bad boy. Up to 650 weapon strength. This thing is hitting like an absolute truck. Its melee attack is also 81 here. Should be able to manhandle that mammoth pretty well. But a lot of it's going to depend on how much value the Council Guard can get against the Skinwolves here. It's still a really close game because those Council Guard as a summon unit will be disappearing here in a minute.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that, man. I think it's really going to be a matter of trying to get as much damage out from that Council Guard as possible. I think it was a good move doing that Scorch 13th spell conjunction onto the Javelin to reduce a lot of that anti-large out there. But I think right now it's just going to be a matter of getting the damage they need out to hopefully capsize some morale before things can go. A nice big shot from the rear there.
Yeah, Shaman Sorcerer getting a nice little fireball into the back, but I can't believe it. It looks like Soothsayer is pulling this game back, showing why he's the two-time baby. The Hell Pit Abomination, able to beat down that Feral Mammoth, and the Council Guard, but the Storm Vermin Halberds do now disappear, but not before they give enough value to the Skaven army to actually fend off that Norskin advance. However, Norsca still does have a lot of Skinwolves coming back, and this is the thing. You can break these doggies, but they're going to heal, they're going to come back, and you're going to have to deal with them once again. But also the Hell Pit's healing, so it does go both ways here. And let's go ahead and take a big look and see what Norsca has left around the battlefield. It's like Shaman Sorcerer, Skinwolves.
I thought there was more, but there's really not.
Yeah, Skinwolves are a big problem, though. Skinwolves, on paper, if you take a look at their stat line, are very good against Hell Pit Abominations. They have massive weapon strength against... I'm sorry about that. They've got massive weapon strength with anti-large and can certainly do some big damage against the Thing here. Thing is still healing. It's going to be a close game.
He does have, what is it called? Too Ugly to Die, right? Where it's the same mechanic that the Hydra has, where he will heal himself below a certain amount of health with a certain recycle in between that, correct?
It's a little bit different because Too Horrible to Die has a percentage proc, whereas the Hydra proc is guaranteed over over periods of time. So it's not as consistent with the Skaven, but honestly, for Soothsayer's sake, this is a win for him. The fact that he's just sitting and healing. I think the Hell Pit's healing value is probably better than that of the Skinwolves since they are at a lower model count. And just like you said, the Skinwolves, you can't resurrect them. So once you reach the maximum HP of each model, you can't heal more. Whereas the Hell Pit Abomination doesn't care about that. It has a lot of room for its healing cap. It could potentially go back up to like 7,000 or 8,000 HP here, which would be very, very scary. And right now, Sooth is just playing, cat and mouse here. The mouse is the one on the hunt this time, and the Marauder Hunter Javelins are being chased down by the Assassin. It looks like some random Clan Rat Spears just kind of break off, and now the Skinwolves are preparing to do battle, and they're charging in. Shaman Sorcerer probably saving up some fireballs as well.
Yeah, I think right now it's going to really come down to capsizing that Sorcerer, try and take out that leadership, because I think if they can stay together, they have a lot of leadership, right, that they're playing with. You have the terror causing from that from the thing, so they can really try to do some damage, and that Assassin can hopefully get in there and really slice and dice up that Shaman Sorcerer.
Absolutely. Hell Pit Abominations, not Hell Pits, but Skinwolves are immune to Psychology while their Frenzy's active, but one unit of them is very beat up. Oh, big Scorch coming in from Sooth. That's going to be nice. Yeah, it kind of clips the back of the formation, but even if it doesn't kill them, it still prevents them from firing for a moment, and they have to reposition. They're currently wavering, and now it looks like the battle is on. Hell Pit Abomination fighting with the Grey Seer support. Fluid Injection is active as well, and the Skinwolves are getting terror routed, which is actually a really, really big play here. Yeah,
I think they really needed that, because the other Skinwolves getting in there probably would have done a lot more damage to that thing. Skinwolf is in there. Oh, the Sorcerer's going down, and there it is. Boom! You got the big W.
Soothsayer with a 2-0. Granted, that was a very good game. Evenstar played very well. It was a close scrap. And, at several points, I actually thought that Soothsayer was going to lose the game. And then I thought Evenstar was out. And both players just showing, how truly high level their play is and scrapping back and forth here. So if we look at the value of these Skaven units, the Mortar teams pretty much always pay for themselves. 1,500. Right. The Globadier teams, 1,100, they paid for themselves. But the real MVP was the thing. Dude, so cool.
Look, when you get close to the thing, it like unsettles me. You see all the rat heads on the top, like all just like screeching and like biting at each other, like
Yeah, Hell Pit Abominations are truly a disturbing unit. But yeah, it was great play by Sooth. I mean, I wasn't sure how he was going to deal with the Skinwolf mobility, considering he just had the thing for his true dedicated anti-large, but he really just kept tight together, used his Haggard Spears to kind of prod them back, while the thing was able to slap those Skinwolves around and really do a great job. And for Evenstar's army, I would imagine the Skinwolves, if we take a look at the value here, 1,100, 1,100, 1,200, you can see Skinwolves are just super good in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, Skinwolves, they always get their value when they have a juicy target, right? And anytime you're fighting against anything that's got a large amount of cav or large single entity units, the Skinwolves can just do so much damage. You have to kind of use them intelligently. You can't just throw them willy-nilly, but they always just get that good regen in there. They're quick on their feet. They just are really solid unit. I think they're probably one of my favorite units in the Norskin roster.
Absolutely. Evenstar also did a very good job with his caster. If you guys take a look here, you can see his firecaster did 13,000 damage overall, more or less, and 1,700 gold of value. So his fireballs, his burning head to roast the clan rat spears and also take half health off the council guard was really good. I was really concerned that the Skaven kind of battle line would just completely buckle off there, but ultimately, Soothsayer will be advancing on to day 2. So tomorrow, it will be our first match. We're going to see Soothsayer facing off against Falcon in a best of 3, the winner of which will be going to the grand finals, and the loser of which will be going to the 3rd place match. So that's going to be very exciting. It's a rematch of a previous Everchosen grand final. So perhaps a chance to settle the score once and for all. But
a blood match.
It'll be good. But
yeah, man. I mean,
fun
this has been a pretty wild first half, right? We have both Loxlon, Soothsayer, and Falcon moving ahead, like you just mentioned, and both of them, like you said, both previous Everchosen Invitational champions. So we're kind of continuing that narrative here. So as we come into our second half, we have a quick halftime show for you guys here. What's the word I'm looking for? We have a quick show match here, showcased by the mighty lore master of Sotek, a gentleman who has joined us in, I think, 2 total Everchosen Invitationals in the past, right? He's competed in every single one of them that he wasn't actually a caster in, correct?
Not every single one, but he competed in the first couple, the first 2 or 3, I think. And then, as a caster, he joined us last time and did a great job. So, absolutely.
Yeah. So he will be showing off. You'll be able to see his prowess here today. And please head on over to his YouTube channel. You can find a ton of campaign and lore videos from the mighty lore master of Sotek. Let's get started here on our halftime show with the lore master of Sotek.
Hello everyone, I am Lore Master of Sotek, the leading figure on the lore of the Warhammer Fantasy universe, as well as one of the most experienced with the olden days of Warhammer Fantasy Tabletop. I hope that you all are enjoying the Everchosen tournament thus far, this amazing event featuring some of the best from among the Total War Warhammer multiplayer community. While this cursed Skaven plague may prevent me from being there in my usual capacity, I thought you all may be interested to learn a little about the new characters you no doubt have seen strutting the battlefields of the Everchosen. So, come along as I guide you all on a brief journey of lore about these heroic and terrifying champions. The first we'll observe is the ruthless forest spirit known as Drycha, the Briar Maven of Woe. Thousands of years ago, the branch wraith tended to the grove of the magnificent tree Adiabok, and spent her time alongside her many dryad handmaidens guarding the sacred lands of Athaloran from invaders. When the Azrai, also known as the Wood Elves, became bound to the forest by the ancients such as Durthu, Drycha was ever distrustful of these supposed allies. Surely, shackling the forest to the whim and fate of mortal blooded life would only bring doom to their kind. In some ways, she was right, as it was the arrogance of the elves that drew the attention of Morgur, the Shadowgave, who during his first invasion of Athaloran was slain at last before Adiabok by Ariel, his tainted blood corrupting the glorious creature into a gnarled and twisted thing, known ever after as the Tree of Woe. The greatest of many failings by the Azrai, all of which resulted in Drycha determining that in order for Athaloran to survive the coming age, the Wood Elves must be eradicated once and for all, by any means necessary. While the Wood Elves remain unaware of this treachery from the bitter branch wraith, even they have caught wind that the Briar Maven of Woe has been spending concerning amounts of time near the dark southwestern corner of Athaloran, where no elf dare tread, known as the Wildwood. Rumors abound that Drycha has been communing with the Elder of the Forest contained within that prison, one of the mightiest forest spirits in all the ancient wood, Coadil the Cunning. This ancient tree man is the corrupted, insane brother of Durthu, and the two of them are the only elders still alive after countless wars to defend their home. Sadly, Coadil was driven over the edge of sanity in the same event that twisted the grove of Adiabok. It was he who managed to charge into the lines of the Beastmen, scatter their hordes, and entangle Morgur long enough for Queen Ariel to obliterate the Gave spawn. Yet, even this great elder, who had long been of wrathful nature, could not resist the corruption caused by Morgur's blood. Speaking of Ariel, The Queen in the Woods has at long last emerged from her hibernation within the Oak of Ages, since 2005, to join the Azrae in battle. The true spiritual leader of the Wood Elves, such is the importance of the goddess that the history of Athel Loren almost entirely revolves around the sagas of her history. The Mage Queen is without a doubt one of the mightiest wielders of the winds of magic to be found in the Warhammer world, and is easily the strongest at the lore of life in particular. Able to tap into the very power contained within Athel Loren itself, in addition to her own mastery, there are only a handful of entities capable of matching her might on the battlefield. Her history is long and complex, spanning from the early wars against her immortal rival, the hideous incarnation of chaos named Morgur, through her revenge-fueled quest to track down the murderer of her beloved sister Alisara, who had been slain when trying to reunite with her husband, Malekith, the Witch King of Naggaroth. Spoiler, it was Morathi, though at least she did get her teeth kicked in by Orion and Ariel before Ariel let her go. It's a long story. The Mage Queen has treated in diplomacy with the mysterious Lady of the Lake, brought low countless champions of the Dark Gods, and led the Azrae through the glory of her greatest victories and the shame of her deepest failures. The aspect of Aisha, wife of Orion, and mother of the Sisters of Twilight, she will be instrumental in saving Athel Loren from the impending age of bloodshed and darkness. Or in being the main ingredient in the best smoothie that Throt the Unclean has probably ever had. That, of course, leaves the Sisters of Twilight themselves, the quite mysterious twins who speak with the authority of the Mage Queen herself. Many rumors persist about the origin of these two legendary archers. Some whisper that they were once an elven child who wandered into the wildwood and were torn asunder, Ariel gathering up their soul and crafting it into two vessels to better serve the weave. Others say that the Sisters of Twilight are the passion and mercy of Ariel herself, split away from the Mage Queen's soul so that they might no longer dominate her being as they have in the past. Many believe the twins to be of divine origin, like Orion and Ariel themselves, simply mortal aspects of one or two gods from the Elven pantheon. The wisest simply as the daughters of Ariel, though whether by blood or some more eldritch method is impossible to say. Regardless, they are two of the mightiest warriors within the forest. Dark-haired Nyestra is a kindly soul who only fights in efforts to prevent further conflict, striking with precise and lethal blows meant to minimize suffering. Her bow, the Talon of Dawn, unleashes bolts of blessed light capable of felling the largest of beasts and burning away those with evil hearts at a touch. White-haired Arahan, on the other hand, revels in the violence of war, a fiery soul who indulges in reckless assaults that tears apart foes in a spectacular display of bladework and gore. Her bow, the Talon of Dusk, unleashes arrows crafted from the husks of the bitterest dryads, the missiles splintering into scores of poisonous shards seeking out Arahan's foes. Her touch is especially baneful to those who are pure and noble at heart. The sisters always ride into battle atop one of their cherished mounts, the wise eagle lord Gwyndolor or the impetuous forest dragon Kaidenhar. Regardless, they are truly deadly foes. For so long as one sister lives, the other will regenerate from the most heinous of wounds, thanks to the powerful magic binding them together. Nearly every time, it is reckless Arahan being slain in one of her overly ambitious assaults, but she always heals moments later. Most famously, she's recovered from being devoured by a gorgon, cutting her way out of the monster's stomach, and being decapitated by a vampire lord within seconds to inflict retribution on her would-be slayer. Standing across from the elves is of course the terrifying Skaven of Clan Moulder, led by the ever-hungry Master Mutator, Throt the Unclean. An impressively mutated creature himself, Throt specializes in experimentation revolving around warpstone, having gone so far as to hammer a solid chunk of the solidified dark magic directly into his skull through an empty eye socket after losing the eye in question while dueling a rival. Since then, his body has warped substantially over many experiments, sharp bone spikes protruding from his spine, growing a third arm, and even vastly increasing his body's metabolism to the point that he quickly heals from nearly any wound, but is quite literally always on the brink of starving. Despite the constant need to consume, lest his body begin to break down, Throt has gone on to accomplish an impressive number of feats as one of the 9 Lords of Hell Pit. Perhaps his greatest accomplishment was roughly 40 years ago, when he captured a blind worm from the Chaos Wastes, using the colossal monster's body as the starting point for creating a new breed of horror you all may be familiar with, known as the Hell Pit Abomination. With his infamous Thing Catcher, Creature Killer, able to easily snap the spine of captured man-thing-sized prey or tear the flesh of larger creatures, and the Whip of Domination, able to inflict mind-rending pain with but a glancing blow, he is truly a terrifying entity both in his flesh laboratory and upon the battlefield. Last is the greatest creation Throt the Unclean ever crafted, despite his recent efforts to see it destroyed. That, of course, would be the horrifying aberration who now stands as the Castellan of Hellpit, Gorich. Once a mighty berserker of Khorne who served in the legions of Archaon the Everchosen, Gorich allowed his desire to spill blood to overrule what little sense he possessed, and launched a disastrous assault upon an army of men from the Empire. This foolish rampage wasted the lives of many warriors, as Gorich was the lone survivor. So, to make an example out of this brazen act of insubordination, the Everchosen had the berserker bound in chains and offered to the cruel masters of Hellpit. The hulking former general of Archaon stood out as impressive stock to none other than Throt the Unclean, who selected the berserker to be the subject of a bizarre new experiment. Impossibly, it was a rousing success, as Throt managed to transplant the Northman's brain into the corpse of a rat ogre, heavily augmented with mechanical components and pumped full of a dizzying cocktail of chemicals meant to keep it animated. Still retaining all of the intelligence and skill he once possessed as a man, Gorich now wielded the savage might and impressive speed of a rat ogre, which proved a devastating combination. He escaped from Throt's secret lab and tore through much of Hellpit, butchering the monstrous horrors sent after him by the 9 lords of the city until he had managed to thoroughly impress them. Since then, he has ascended the ranks of Clan Moulder, rising from a lowly experiment to a chieftain before being entrusted with control of Hellpit's garrison legions. As for Throt, he has been incredibly displeased by the feats of his disobedient creation, worried that Gorich may one day attempt to supplant his creator. The Master Mutator has concocted no small measure of convoluted schemes in hopes that one brings Gorich low, but so long as the Castellan of Hellpit remains useful, even Throt the Unclean will tolerate the aberration's presence. Now then, that's all the time I have. I hope these brief backgrounds entertained you all and gave some insight on the new champions no doubt striding across the battlefields this weekend. Of course, be sure to pick up The Twisted and The Twilight for yourselves coming out on December 3rd, so you can dive into controlling these incredible legends and experience their power for yourself. If you'd like to know more about me or the lore of the Warhammer Fantasy Universe, please come visit me at www.youtube.com/loremasterofsotek or www.twitch.tv/loremasterofsotek for gameplay and much, much more. Thanks so much to Creative Assembly for allowing me this time to speak with you all. I hope Turin and Italian have a buttery smooth casting of the event, and good luck to all of the competitors in this Everchosen. May the best general win, or else you may be doomed to Throt's laboratory for yourselves. Bye, guys.
All right, and welcome back to the Everchosen Invitational number 7. As we kick things off here, we're going to talk about the bracket real quick, but just to kind of recap what we've already seen today, we've already seen 2 best-of-3 matches, and we have another set of best-of-3s. A huge shout-out and thank you to Lore Master of Sotek for our intermission, our halftime show. But this first set of matches were pretty interesting, right? We had best of 3, and both of them were 0-2, right? They just kind of they were a clean sweep pushing through into the second half of the day. We can see Falcon versus Lotus Moon kicking off our first match, followed by Evenstar versus Loxlon Soothsayer. Evenstar, a new face of the Loxlon, or of the Everchosen Invitational.
The Loxlon Empire. Well, isn't it? Is it like that with an L, or is it Talaxtalon, or is it Loxlon like you're saying it?
You know, I don't know, man.
There's no proper interpretation.
Yeah, that's the worst thing about all like Warhammer pronunciations is it's like there's so many different ways you can pronounce it. Is it an actual word? Then it's got that pronunciation format. But I've been saying Loxlon Soothsayer because I think that's how you pronounce it. But
you're probably right. Yeah,
I got to brush up on my
games.
Aztec history to find out.
So yeah, good games for sure. The series between Falcon and Lotus Moon was certainly very quick and decisive. The series with Soothsayer and Evenstar was a little bit more contentious. That second game was very, very heated, and also a very good showcase of how the Skaven can stop Skinwolves, which is a matchup that, if I remember correctly, Soothsayer is very familiar with. I think oftentimes he's played Skaven against Skinwolves in tournaments, and at least when I played against him, he was very familiar with it. So he really showed what the thing can do with its fluid injection. Definitely doing some big damage. But now we're going into our third matchup of the day, which is going to be another best of 3. It's going to be Guac. So Guac is a newcomer to the Everchosen. He stormed all the way through his qualifier, and nobody was expecting him to make it to the grand finals. He did. He defeated a very solid tournament opponent. And now he's here facing off against another 2-time Everchosen champion in Aerocrastic. So this should be quite a bit of fun. Aerocrastic, of course, is also the author of the banner rules. Of course, there's many folks who have contributed to the banner rules, but he is the holder of the document and really has done a great job with the rules for the community tournament scene. So big props to him. But yeah, now we're going to be jumping into the battle. It's going to be Aerocrastic on High Elves facing off against Guac on... wouldn't it be fun to have Guac facing off against Flying Taco? Just the battle of the delicious
foods.
Yeah. But yes, we'll be loading into the game. It's going to be Aerocrastic on the High Elves. Certainly a faction that a lot of people think are, it's a very common thing. Like when people are watching streams, like, oh, the High Elves aren't very good. But I think in the hands of the right player, like someone like Aerocrastic or Lotus Moon, these elf specialists, they can be pretty terrifying for sure. So would you like to talk about the High Elves? Maybe I'll look at this Skaven here. How's that sound?
I will. You know I will. So let's have you talk about those disgusting Skaven, and I'll go into the High Elves.
Yeah, so for the filthy Skaven, as you've coined here, in the front we do have what appears to be some mortars. Yes, those are going to be the Poison Wind mortar teams, which are just so good in this matchup. A hard counter against archer lines, pretty good against heavy cavalry as well. Just pretty much always pay for themselves. On the other side, another mortar team. He does also have a single Jezzail, which is going to be the Natty Bubo sharpshooters. Ooh. These guys are the ROR Jezzail, which means they shoot and remain hidden in the process until someone gets very close. Very nice, because if somebody has artillery, they can't really fight back against them unless they get a scout up there to really check things out. A lot of counters against cavalry. Silver Helms and Reavers are very common for trying to penetrate into the Skaven back line. So Rat Ogres are there as a countermeasure with Skaven Slave Spears in conjunction with the Helped Abomination, which is a good anti-monster piece. Got a Plague Priest here, and the Lord is going to be Deathmaster Snikich with an Assassin. So nothing really new here from the build from Aerocrastic. He's not bringing the Brood Horrors or Throt the Unclean, and Throt, I think, would be pretty good in this matchup. But generally speaking, a pretty old-school Skaven build here. Aerocrastic going with the tried and true build that he's very, very used to. And now for the Elfarim, what do we got here for the Elf Army?
Yeah, so... And just to kind of to piggyback off that, yeah, like for the most part, there is a large pool on the line here. So people are going to go with some tried and true stuff. Aerocrastic here on the High Elves. And as you said before, Aero is the author of the famous coffee table book, High Elves, Are We the Baddies? So throughout the whole entire army here, it's going to be mainly a heavy cav play. As you and I were talking about earlier before the intermission, or during the intermission, that you don't want to bring elite cav. So what we see with Aerocrastic is mainly Silver Helms and Illyrian Reavers, followed by 2 Arcane Phoenixes. These are the fire-based ones, the Flamespire Phoenix. These guys are going to have the ability to drop their bombs and do some damage, but also they're very fast on their, talons on their feet, on their wings, and they can come in and out of combat very well to switch targets, followed by support of, I believe that's Lariel, right?
Yeah, it's going to be Ilariel the Radiant, and she's certainly very good. Anytime you want to spam single entities, which is what High Elves are pretty much all about, she's going to be the go-to pick. And Arcane Phoenixes are pretty good against Skaven because, number one, they do fire damage. So against Hell Pit Abominations and some of their regenerating characters that happen to be weak to fire, you get a benefit. But also on top of that, they do have the Vortex ability. So against Council Guard, they don't drop bombardments like Flamespire Phoenixes do. The Arcane Phoenixes fly overhead, they dive down into a vortex, and it actually does really good damage against tightly packed spears and units like that. So Arrow, for example, I think is going to get his Arcane Phoenixes and try and do that here as he does approach while harassing on the other side with his Lion Chariots.
Yep, Lion, Arcane Phoenix. I totally looked at those and said, oh, that's a Flamespire Phoenix, even though you highlighted over and it says Arcane. So yeah, just like you said, diving right in, trying to get that quick, high-value play, but he's also charging in with some calves, so they can't dedicate 100% to locking those down. You have the Warp Grinders coming in. If those guys get in range, they can keep them on the ground with the Seismic Snare. And what's the other ability that actually locks them in place?
Yeah, it's I forget what it's called. There's Seismic Snare, and then there's like some sort of a Quake ability. One does damage, one snares. That was a pretty masterful play by Arrow. Getting the Arcane Phoenixes to push back the Poison Wind Mortars and temporarily terrify them, which almost worked out because the mortars almost ran out of their protective box, but in this case, they do get rallied by the spears. And Arrow really just using his Phoenixes, getting really aggressive, and yeah, nice lockdown right there on those Silver Helms. Seismic Snare and Warp Quake.
Yeah. You know, what I really like about this move here is that Arrow is not 100% committing with his cap. He's lancing in with a couple bit right here, getting some initial pull, and then he's moving out. He's doing a little bit on the other side and moving out. You can see Snitch getting right in there. You've got the not the thing, but the Hell Pit Abomination. That is AP and anti-large coming out from those guys, bouncing into the Arcane Phoenix. Got Shield of Thorns, though, dropped down from LRL to help mitigate some of that damage as Rival High Talisman brings a ton of melee attack penalty on them, so not going to be doing as much damage.
Yeah, this is very much like what I like to call the Vulture style of play. You poke in, you prod with your monsters and try and get terror routes, and when you're able to terror route things and things run from the safety of the pack, it's kind of like the hyena style of play, right? They run away, and then you pick off the weak routing units as they run, which this doesn't work against every faction, right? Like trying to do this against the Dwarves, they wouldn't break and run, but Skaven, you go in for a couple seconds, you get a couple terror routes, and your Cav units charge in and get some really big damage. And in the meantime, Aerocrastic's Cav are doing well. His Silver Helms and Reavers on the low ground have gotten good charges on the mortar teams and also against the Ogres, and his Goon Squad is really doing substantial damage. But you also have to remember the Skaven are getting some damage back. Here we do have broken Silver Helms, here some more broken Cav, and also, looks like one of the birds is trapped. The goose is getting cooked, man.
He's just now squeezing out of it, though. There he goes, right up into the air again. And I mean, what you said is it's pretty masterful, right? Like Aerocrastic is using a Skaven mechanic against them. They have scurry away, so when their leadership does break, they're going to be fleeing at a faster rate. So what he's basically doing is relying on them fleeing, then he can pick them off one at a time and prevent them from rallying to come back into this fight.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see a lot of Cav units around the battlefield are coming back now, Silver Helms and Reavers. Balance of power is actually pretty even here, honestly. Even though it looks like Arrow has been picking apart the Skaven army, Arrow has also been taking substantial damage right back. Both of his birds are a little bit beat up. His Chariot's about to get slapped up here by the Hell Pit Abomination. And yeah, the Skaven still have mortars. They still have Warp Grinders online, Ogres. And the leadership kit, Deathmaster plus the Assassin plus the Plague Priest, are all in great shape. And despite, being harassed and poked and prodded, Guac is doing an excellent job of staying stable here and, not panicking. Oh, look at that. Really nice play there by Guac, using his Warp Grinder to lock down the charge of the Silver Helms.
And, one thing with those Arcane Phoenixes, we still haven't seen their Vortex ability once yet. They haven't used it, as I recall it, right?
I do not believe so. Also, something else to note is if that Arcane Phoenix does get a little bit lower, he has the chance to have the Rebirth and get a massive free heal. Right. So that is something to consider. Balance of power is still dead even at this point. Those mortars still shooting, though, is a big problem. It's really kind of forcing the High Elves to come in, and rather than taking the engagements they want.
Yeah, and the mortars, typically, when you look at them, you're not going to think of them as doing a lot of damage to cavalry. Typically stuff like that doesn't. But these are low armor cavalry units in Illyrian Reavers, right? You have 30 armor or 40 armor on these guys, and that persistent damage over time with the explosion is really adding up heavy. Like, look at that blast right there. Like, that is going to do damage. It's going to slow them down. It's not going to be fun.
It's really nice for sure, but the thing about Poison Wind Mortars too is they actually have really high AP values with their base contact. So even against like elite units like Dragon Princes, they're still going to hit hard on impact, and then from there they'll also be doing the damage over time, which doesn't really care about your armor values. Or the only thing that would mitigate it, of course, would be the magic resist. So right now, Arrow's having to kind of regroup and get his bearings. You can see his cavalry are spread out all over the battlefield, but the Skaven are they're fine with this, man. They're going to rub their little rat paws together and scheme and just keep blasting with these mortars. Oh, look at the bombardment coming in. There
it's coming in. It's going. It's dropping. There's that. I was going to ask you too. How does this do against single entities? I mean, because there's not a lot of grouped units on the table anymore.
It doesn't do anything against single entities, really. The Vortex ability is just designed to crowd clear and take out clan rats. This is a good pick, though, from Arrow. If he can chase the spears away, he can come in for an alpha strike, which is pretty much what he's going to have to do. He's going to have to butter up and cycle charge in and pick off as many things as he can, including the rat ogres, and then try and fight Deathmaster. Granted, I feel like Guac is actually maybe pulling ahead a little bit in this game, unless, of course, he overextends here and lets his Lord get picked off, because Deathmaster is very squishy. Oh man, Arrow laying such a good
Star
trap.
of Averlorn coming in there, getting a good amount of healing going on the Arcane Phoenix and single entities. Look at Snick. He's going down hard right now.
He's the definition of a glass cannon. I mean, his HP pool is like just around 3,000. Those birds hit pretty hard. And, you know, the pigeon lady here, Alariel, also hits quite hard. She's got some serious pecs going on. You can see, 496 weapon strength with Shield of Thorns. That's really not bad. And the problem now for the Skaven is Deathmaster is probably going to be hunted. The big play for Guac, though, he needs to try and get Deathmaster back to the safety of his fellow rats. But we'll see if he's going to be able to, as Aerocrastic then charges in and kind of vultures on the Warp Grinders and the other prey here in the back line. But that's actually a pretty nice snare there.
Yeah, I mean, one of those Arcane Phoenix is kind of trapped up and wrapped up with a lot of units now at this point. One, I think, has got an easy exit. The White Lion Chariot coming in as well. You got Alariel diving once more onto Snick, using that big old hefty charge bonus because it's a great eagle. But the one thing they do have to worry about is trying to keep a good distance from the Hellpit Abomination. But they're just kind of piling all in. Just like you said earlier, that Alpha Strike is kicking in, and Aerocrastic is trying to just get that hard death on Snickage.
Yeah, it's a very cool build by Arrow for sure, because typically High Elves in this matchup, in my anecdotal experience, of course, will spam archers. So they'll just bring like a million archers, because archers kill much of the Skaven roster. Hellpits, ogres, they can snipe the characters relatively well depending on who they are. And that's why the Skaven bring mortars. But against a mass cav rush with, of course, the Arcane Phoenixes, who have yet to get their rebirth, could still happen. But yeah, man, this is such a close fight. Balance of power is slightly in the favor of Aerocrastic, but we've seen Deathmaster carry game super hard. He is a glass cannon, but if he can get his little rat paws on you, he can do some big old damage.
Yeah, man, he can really, if he really can focus on Alariel, he can take her down very fast. So I think it's pretty nice that you can see that Guac is kind of using the Hellpit Abomination to get... Oh,
yeah.
There goes Snitch.
Yeah, but Alariel might pay the troll toll as well.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, she's been afflicted by the Assassin's Trophy there, and she took, not Assassin's Trophy, the Deathmaster Sigil while he's being punted in the air, and she took some big damage, but it looks like she is able to escape, and now the Arcane Phoenixes, of course, which did come from the most recent DLC, I believe, are able to polish off Deathmaster. He's now shattered. He's going to be going back to his clan Eshin lair and perhaps rethinking his career, all that sort of good stuff.
And there's still plenty of healing. That's one of the biggest things about L'Oreal. With Star of Averlorn, you get so much healing coming out of her. She could pop it down right now and keep everything in all those single entities targets topped off pretty well. Ooh, might get a rebirth. Oh, there's that Star of Averlorn. She has the ability to drop, is it Earthblood or Regrowth that she has in her magic kit?
She has Earthblood. She doesn't have Regrowth, in her kit, but she's got Shield of Thorns and Earthblood. And yeah, that's a really nice play. I mean, potentially a game-winning play. You guys probably saw the bounce of power was going back towards the middle there, but that Earthblood, and also Aerocrastic's uncanny ability to punt things out of their safety formation. So the little Skaven Assassin, they don't really have good mass compared to like a Dwarven Thane. So the birds are able to kind of like pick them up a little bit, push them out of the formation, which then allows Arrow to really, really goon these guys incredibly effectively. And Hellpit Abomination breaking, it looks like that is going to be game one.
Yes,
going
sir.
to the two-time himself, man, Aerocrastic. What a great game by Guac, though. Really putting up a great fight, almost, pulling out the game at several instances, and really looking forward to seeing their next match here.
Yeah, I really like how Guac dealt with that that Alpha Strike and that all-in. One thing you probably don't really get to realize or even see, it's even hard for us to kind of commentate on, is taking single entity targets, like big things like the Hellpit Abomination, and trying to get them in front and actually physically block your other smaller creatures like Snick or the Assassin. You can actually use those single entities to try and move around the pocket a little bit to help defend as best you can. But yeah, man, I really liked this build from Arrow. It was very unique, bringing nothing but cavalry and flying units to the table here. So I think it brings a lot of mobility. And you and I were saying before this is one of the best ways to threaten into Skaven is by using Silver Helms or Illyrian Reavers, and Arrow took that and just went the whole nine on it, right? He went ham, nothing but it.
It's a super micro-intensive build too. Like in the hands of a newer player, or even an intermediate player, Arrow's build would have been extremely difficult to use. And yeah, it worked out well for sure. The Arcane Phoenixes did some really big damage, and the Chariot also did good damage. You know who would have actually been really good in that matchup for the Skaven? Would have been Throt the Unclean. His anti-large and his creature killer would have been very useful at fighting those Phoenixes, and his ability to summon Rat Ogres would have also been very nice to kind of fend off some of those other threats, like the Silver Helms and the Reavers charging in. Deathmaster is certainly not a bad choice, but he is very squishy, and with a build like Arrow brought, he can go down incredibly quick to proper cycle charging from the Arcane Phoenixes and some of those other tools. So now the players are getting ready for the next match. We'll be seeing what schemes are up. It looks like it is going to be Skaven once again. Aerocrastic actually, I would say I consider him a Skaven main. He's been playing Skaven for a long time, even in the early days when they were a little bit limited in their roster. And now they have probably one of the most diverse rosters overall, right? So,
I mean, when you kind of look at it, it's pretty well represented, right? Like, Tabletop
they have
this huge roster, so now they get the advantage of having pretty much every one of those major warlord clans in there.
Yeah, I think how many are there? There's 4 major clans?
There's 5 warlord clans, because there's Pestilence, Scryer, Moors, Molder, and I already said Pestilence, I already said Scryer.
And then there's Clan. Oh, how could we forget Clan Rictus and Tretch? The mighty one himself.
The mighty one himself. The other one, Eshin, that's the other one. That's the 5th. Yeah, so it's like you pretty much have all the aspects of the Skaven society, and then you get Moors, which brings the warrior cast in, right? Like with your Storm Vermin and with your Clan Rats and the such. So it's cool too to see this, to see how the Skaven have evolved too, right? When you look at the beginning of Total War Warhammer 1 to what it is now, and how they have so many different options, right? Poison Wind Mortars have been brought to the table. You get so many cool, fun things, especially with Throt the Unclean or with the Triads. You just have so many options for every little matchup now with the Skaven.
Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't seen his Royal Thickness yet today. I think, I think Throt is really good.
Royal Thickness.
Yeah, he is. He's all business. Yeah, he's got that Thanksgiving vibe going on for sure. But dude, I've been in like a turkey coma the past like 2 days, just like fever dreams, like laying there at night, just like
I'm awake. I didn't even know I was awake. Yeah, I can't hold it much longer, Anakin, just twitching there from all the turkey.
I know. Well, I think we're about ready to jump into the battle here. We'll take a look. It's going to be Aerocrastic on Skaven, and it's going to be Guac on the dreaded greenskins. It looks like the color of guacamole. So since I know you don't like greenskins, I will happily take a look at this army.
Please, thank you. God, they just smell like fungus.
Dude, greenskins are so awesome. As a matter of fact, I'm looking to start a goblin army in tabletop, so I'm quite excited about that.
The Gloom Spite Spits.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So for Guac, we have Forest Goblin Spider Riders into the Sunset. Now, this is a very good choice because archers are quite good against Rat Ogres and a lot of the big light armor like Brood Horrors. Much of the Molder stuff is very weak against like Skirmish Cav and this type of missile play. So that's a good inclusion. And even if Arrow doesn't bring the new Molder units, he still will have Rat Ogres and, the other targets that are very squishy, like maybe the Wolves, or what are they, Wolf Rats? That's what they're called. Wolf Rats. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We got Orc Boys in the front, some Stone Trolls in the back. Stone Trolls, if you are going to pay the Troll toll against Skaven, this is probably the best choice because they have Missile Resist, which is really good against Skaven. And on top of that, Skaven often do have a lot of magic, so having the magic resist the boot is very, very strong. Savage Orc Biggins in the back, just a dual-purpose anti-large beater to take down the big monsters. And we got Night Goblins back here, more Stone Trolls in the forest, making Danny DeVito proud. And it looks like some Forest Goblin Spider Riders lurking in the trees with Grom the Paunch. A very cool army for sure. It's a wide army. It's a swarming army. That's typically how you beat Skaven gunlines. And now for the rat people, what do we got, man?
Looks like we got a Gracier of Plague right over there. We're going to see some other fun stuff with the Hell Pit Abomination, which I think, honestly, the Hell Pit Abomination has had such a really good place nowadays with that AP and anti-large. It's such a solid unit, and its ability to get that regen in there, I think it's a really, really, really solid one. Throughout the front line, though, it looks like are those some Poison Wind Globadiers as well. And,
yeah.
I've seen them in almost every single matchup lately. Like, there are very few that you don't see them being used right now, and Poison Wind Globadiers are so cheap and so effective now. But Plague Monks are going to be in this matchup as well, and I think it's a really good one. They're going to have a lot of really good anti-infantry. Rat Ogres in the back line, 3 units of them. We're looking to support some stuff. We got a nice flank here of Wolf Rats to help kind of not siphon out, but at least block out a lot of the skirmish cav that we're going to be able to get from the greenskins. So plenty of options here. Enough anti-large to threaten into those stone trolls to offer them an egg in a trying time. So it should be a lot of fun. We can already see the Plague Claw Catapult, which is a really nice addition here too, because it does so much area of effect damage, and you do have nice blobs of greenskin infantry marching down range towards you.
Yeah, the Plague Claw Catapults are a really good countermeasure against Savage Orcs and more elite infantry, and they can do good work against Goblins, but also, like I said, in the High Elf matchup, Greenskins like to do the same thing against Skaven as well. It's often very common to see a lot of Orc Arrow Boys or Goblin Archers, kind of chaff units like that, so having the perpetual focus fire from the Plague Claw Catapult is incredibly nice. Hellpit Abomination going in to slap the belly here of Grom the Paunch, and he'll be forced back. Yeah, he took a little blow right there. Another one, man. Hellpit really getting some good damage in. But now Plague Monks are engaging against Orc Boys in the front, and the Greenskin missile line kind of sitting idle in the back. Walk really needs to make sure to get those back online. This is an opportunity where he could use Mither to try and slow down the Hellpit and get a ton of follow-up damage for sure.
Oh, that's one of the newer ones. I totally forgot about that. That
came
out
the
with
Hag.
Yep. That came with the previous DLC, the Warden and the
Paunch.
Paunch. There it is.
Yeah, big old happy Punch, man. And the battle rages on to the front. Orc Boys and Skaven Slaves piling in. Plague Monks, of course, being kept in reserve, letting the classic Clan Rats and Skaven Slaves take the initial beating. But Plague Monks, though they would beat Orc Boys head-to-head, are probably going to have a little problem as these big old stone trolls are going to be piling in. But Hellpit is here to support, which is a very good play from Arrow, giving mass to protect his quote-unquote, air quotes, elite infantry.
Yeah, and like you said, man, I mean, getting that, you really always see these kind of infantry clashes, and there's nice support usually coming in. Was that the Dreaded 13 spell that brought up some Skaven in the background right there? We got some Storm Bourbon?
It's just a Gracier Plague, and I don't know if he even has that.
Okay.
Oh, he does have it, but I think it was just a Clan Rat summon, so no big excitement yet. The Dreaded 13 spell, I'm sure we'll see in the fourth quarter of the game as a surprise. And the reason why you see the Dreaded 13 spell saved for the late game is because in accordance with attacking rules that are used in this tournament, if you don't have any missiles left to shoot or anything, you have to attack. You can't like run away. Right. So normally if somebody summons Storm Vermin, you're going to run from them, right? But in the late game, you save it, you force them into combat, and you prosper.
And look at that! You can see a little bit of action here with the Wolf Rats kind of falling back. They've done their business over here. The massive Orc Wah has kicked off, so we're getting some distance from any unit that is not engaged in combat, trying to just wear out some of that Wah. Don't take it in the face there. It does increase their melee attack, their damage, makes immune to psychology. So you might as well wear them out and not face it if you can. Try and get some distance created there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys will notice a really important thing about Aeroclastic Skaven play, and for anyone who wants to be a Skaven player, this is something very important to note. Not so much for campaign. In campaign, there's a multitude of tricks you can do, obviously, but in multiplayer, you'll notice the buffering, the buffer zone between his front line and his artillery in the back. So if you put your artillery too close to your front line as Skaven, your Skaven Slaves and Clan Rats are going to buckle and break, and you'll lose your artillery, your gun lines. It's very much about having Skaven Slaves, Clan Rats, additional units, Rat Ogres, like layers they have to break through, because Skaven are probably one of the best factions at dragging people through the mud here. And now you can see the Globadiers. Are they going to be turning and throwing? No, it looks like they're pulling back as the dreaded Night Goblins get into the back line, and the Greenskins have now broken the front line and are penetrating into the secondary reserves of the Skaven. However, I feel like the Skaven have done enough damage to the Greenskin advance that they'll probably be in good shape going in here to the late game.
Yeah, it's like you were saying, you just kind of get that mockery of geometry, right? Where we look at with the dwarfs have these lines after lines of beautiful Grombril armor, but then you look at the Skaven, where it's just basically line after line of fodder that they have to eat their way through to get to the juicy center. So it's such a cool way to see how these the Skaven armies are always set up and how they use those overlapping lines of fire. And you can see everything kind of coalescing here in the center. You've got those, you've got the assassin, you have got Grom the Paunch, everyone right there in that little pocket with the stone trolls.
This is a good opportunity here for Guac. I think he's currently behind in the game a little bit, but if Guac can capture and take out the assassin using his River Troll Hag and Grom the Paunch, I think that'd be a big pick. Because the Skaven army is just slowly picking apart the Greenskins here. The Stone Trolls are just being dragged down by a volume of 1,000,000 pebbles here from the Skaven Slaves. The Catapult has been shooting this entire game, which is probably doing some devastating damage. And now, for the first time, you can actually see the greenskin advances completely buckling, and pretty much the only thing still fighting for the greenskins are their unbreakable goblins.
Oh man, look at those rat ogres just pouncing onto Grom the Paunch while he just tries to do like donuts through the whole entire line over there, just kind of Tokyo drifting through everything, buckling right into that assassin, trying to get out of that pocket.
Yeah, he's got the assassin kind of isolated a little bit, but with the rat ogre support nearby, and also wolf rats with their poison, that's something that you don't really expect from Skaven, right? The ability to chase your stuff off the battlefield and really keep up with you. But now that they have the wolf rats, it's a whole new world, man. It's a whole new world. And
shining, shimmering.
Yeah, the greenskins certainly not enjoying this new world here, but greenskins I think are a top tier faction as well. I think it's a pretty even matchup between Skaven and greenskins, but in the end, Aerocrastic showed why he was the most recent Everchosen champion 2-time, and is also one of the better Skaven players in the community as well, with that really good layered defense, just a tried and true build, and was able to crump the greenskins and really drag them through the mud.
Yeah, it's just so interesting with Skaven, especially now with Twisted in the Twilight. Their roster is quote-unquote complete, right? You have got so many things from everyone now. You got Mulder, you got Scryer, you've got Eshin, you now have Moors, you have all this representation. So like I said earlier, you have all these different units you can bring to the table. And Arrow showed us how he can have a small, very mobile army and do really well. And he showed us how he can have a static defensive army like this and still do very well. So that's kind of one of the things that Arrow kind of has in his back pocket, is that ability to be very adaptable to what he's against.
100%, man. And look at the value on those Globateers. I mean, though they only earned 800...
14,000.
Yeah, 14,000 damage. If we look at the rest of the Skaven roster, 3,000, 1,300, Plague Monks, 9,000. Ooh, pretty good value on those Plague Monks, actually.
Yeah,
and granted,
seriously.
It was mostly against Orc Boys, and that's why, these guys probably... an Orc Boy unit has about 6,500 HP or something like 7,000. I can't quite remember, but they probably killed an Orc Boy plus a little bit of extra. But Globes for 550, generally in these matchups in which you're expecting to be rushed by Greenskins, by Norska, by Beastmen, I find that they always just do so much damage. Because at 550 gold, all you need is one volley. If you throw one volley of the Globes into an infantry unit, it will generally get you like 300 to 500 gold value back. So yeah, just a great unit. Wolf Rats are really nice as like a sweeper, and look at that, 976 in those Wolf Rats there. But yeah,
so
it was great.
For anyone that might be newly joining us, how does that damage dealt and damage value work? I know it is recently added with Twisted and Twilight and the newest patch for that, but can you quickly go over how is that value button or how's that value line generated?
So in multiplayer or Total War Warhammer, you have a finite amount of resources to pick your units with, right? So typically in tournament play and quick battles, you're given 12,400 gold to pick an army. So you can see the first statistic up top while I'm looking at Grom the Paunch here is the amount of damage he dealt overall. So that's just raw HP damage, but not all damage is equal. So for example, Grom the Paunch could run over, 2 units of full Skaven slaves doing about 14,000 damage, but that would only really be 300 gold worth of value. So the second number you're seeing, which is the damage value number, is the amount of actual gold he killed over the course of the battle. Now, just because a unit doesn't, get its gold back doesn't mean it did badly, right? It could have been screening, it could have been occupying a valuable position, could have been, casting support spells, but it still is a very useful metric for seeing what aspects of your army really were able to crump the most value of your opponent's army. And you can see the Stone Trolls themselves really just were beating on chaff for most of the battle, did not pay for themselves. And a lot of the Greenskin army definitely struggled to accrue its value back, with the exception of maybe a couple Orc Boys, and the Savage Orc Biggins got about 500, so not bad. But that is going to be a 2-0 sweep for Aerocrastic, and I believe this happened at the last Everchosen as well. I think the first round games of day one were all freaking 2-0s, and then the next day, and then day two, which of course will be starting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Last time was just straight up, back and forth games, like going to game 3, going to game 5. It was a very contested tournament. So we'll see if the curse
rubber matches back and forth.
Yeah, we'll see if the curse of day one begins. But I think before our last game here, we'll take a little intermission, get some water, get some Earl Grey tea going, and we'll be back for a glorious battle, man.
You're on the Earl Grey. I'm over here with Moroccan mint green tea. Now I feel like a pleb. Okay, yeah, take the intermission now.
Gotta have some Earl Grey hot, man. It'll be good. But yeah, thanks again for joining, guys. Appreciate you. And we'll be seeing you in the last game, which is going to be the dreaded Flying Taco against Fistek. So it should be quite a bit of fun, and we'll see you guys there in a minute.
All right, we're back here, and we are at our last match of the day. It's going to be Flying Taco versus Fistek in a Tomb Kings match. If you guys have not had a chance to, head on over to Steam to take advantage of the autumn sale. We do have the Twisted and the Twilight coming out December 3rd, so you can take advantage of that as well. But you can get Total War Warhammer 1, 2, and any of its DLCs from up to 75% off. So if you want to take advantage of all the DLC, FLC stuff with Twisted and Twilight, it is now on that super sale. But let's take a look at our match here today as we take a look on this Tomb King match with, I think it's Vampire Coast versus...
Oh, I thought you were saying map. You said Tomb King map, I think is what you meant to say, right?
Map, yes.
So yeah, Fistek is certainly known for his undead play. He's very good at the undead trifecta. You know, the Tomb Kings, the Vampire Coast, and obviously the Vampire Counts, and that's a pretty common scheme. So for anyone who's new to the game, maybe looking to get into the tournament scene, typically most mid-level or top-level players are very, very good at 3 factions. That gives you opportunities for a little bit of variance as it pertains to counterpicking your opponent or picking a faction that isn't weak against what your opponent's good at. So that's kind of the common kit. And in that process, what you often see is people will play factions that have similar playstyles. For example, a very common kit is playing the 3 undead factions because they typically have very good monsters, very good lord sniping capabilities, et cetera, et cetera. Oftentimes, you'll also see like Skaven and Vampire Coast be factions that are mixed together because they're both defensive gunline factions. So just a little bit of a tidbit there. So in this match, though, it is going to be Flying Taco. He's going to be on the Taco's actually playing. Okay, that threw me back a little bit. But Taco's actually playing the Vampirates, and we're going to be having Fistek on the Vampire Counts, which there have been some pretty cool changes. You saw the changes with Vlad von Karstein, yeah?
No, I have not.
So Vlad used to be a lord that was obviously very tanky on foot, but not often brought simply because he couldn't really duel with enemy lords. So you're giving up mobility, but not for much in return. But now Vlad has been given a majority armor-piercing values. So Vlad von Karstein, when he goes to fight enemy lords, he can now, go fisticuffs for sure. On top of that, he now causes terror on foot, which is really cool. Seeing like a foot lord that causes terror, because that's really rare, very, very uncommon. Right. And on top of that, he his von Karstein ring used to be a one-time use. So, for example, the von Karstein ring would give you a 90% ward save once per battle for a period of, I think, like 24 seconds. But now it gives 66% ward save, and it can be used infinitely during the battle, of course, in conjunction with the cooldown. So it's very neat for sure. Big changes, Vampire Counts. Vargeists also, Ryan. I don't know if you saw that. They also do armor piercing now.
Trust me, I did not.
Yeah, Vargeists do big AP damage now. So it's really actually changed up a lot of the old world factions as well. So
yeah, that's what I've really liked about these patches. We've seen so many things like that, right? With Vlad or Sigvald, or now with the Terrorgeists, Terrorgeists. And the way that they've just taken those things that have been kind of, I'll put this to the side in lieu of something more competitive, and they've buffed them up a little bit better or made them just more dynamic or interesting, has been really fun to kind of watch this evolution.
The dreaded goose, man. And now we're here with the battle. So let us begin and take a look at the armies here. I'll go over the Vampire Coast here. It's going to be a Luther Harkin blob. So basically, you have a bunch of angry crabs. You have Rotting Leviathan. You also have the Lamprey's Revenge, a bunch of halberds. And it's very much a defensive build, right? Because Luther Harkin will probably dominate the skies. So you just sit in the box, force the Vampire Counts to come fight your Crabos and Halberds, and you cackle and vampire it, or however you want to cackle. What do we see here for the forces of Fistek?
It's going to be pretty wide. Yeah, it's looking pretty wide. We see a lot of Crypt Ghouls going in. Are those in the center? Is that going to be Skeleton Warriors, or is that going to be just Skeleton Warriors, Kungsang Stalkers with the Skeleton Warrior Regiment of Renown? We see some bats in the back over here. Oh, the dreaded black coach, double black coach, even better. Isabella von Karstein on a Nightmare, and it's going to be a Banshee, 2 Banshees as well to give some good. Now, the nice thing about Banshees is they do have very high physical resistance. They are a quote-unquote assassin character for their heroes, so they can try and get in there and do some good damage and try and kill things quickly. But with these Crypt Ghouls, the Crypt Ghouls should act very well at killing a lot of these zombie hordes of the Vampirates, while these Skeleton Warriors kind of hold the line to kind of get all of these ethereal, kind of heavier hitters in the background there. So we've got those black coaches and the not specters, the Banshees getting in and trying to do some damage. The specters.
It's a good build from Fistek. The double Banshees are very, very good against Vampire Coast because, believe it or not, aside from Sirens and the Lore of the Deep,
right,
and
very
of course
little magic damage.
Yeah, there's very little magic damage on the Vampire Coast roster. I mean, you can bring it, but it's kind of like rolling the dice, right? Because if you invest in that magic, which isn't the optimal way to play Vampire Coast, like using Invocation and Raise Dead, and they don't bring the Banshees, you pay the Troll Toll. But in this case, Taco's going to have to work down those Banshees the old-fashioned way, just like the pure grind. On top of that, the Black Coaches are very good at disrupting the back line and can also kill the elite infantry. And the Crypt Ghouls are also exceptional at cutting down the chaff units. But you could tell Fistek's build is very heavily designed to actually kill a gun line, or maybe more of a kind of a traditional hybrid build. But I'm curious to see how well it will do against Flying Taco's mobile crab box here, which of course is moving about as swiftly as a crab does across the battlefield and
sideways, so it's perfect.
Yeah, it's pretty great. Oh, that's good. Nice catch there, man.
You know,
the Crypt Ghouls are trying to surround. Yeah.
Sorry. It's interesting too because the Black Coach, I mean, it used to be such a fun meme, and the Black Coach, as it stays in combat, it gets stronger. It's got 3 buffs that trip off every couple of seconds. You can see them at the bottom there. They do, I think one of them adds flaming attacks, correct?
Yeah, so the Black Coach, we can go ahead and zoom in. We have a little bit of downtime as the players posture their armies and whatnot. So the Black Coach does have ascending buffs, like Italian Spartacus articulated. It's, I believe, every, I can't recall. So yeah, it starts with the Black Size, which gives charge bonus and speed. It eventually gets fire damage and AP, and then eventually it gets ward save. Now, it has to stay in combat to get those buffs. If it goes out of combat, the buffs begin to wear off. So Black Coaches are weird because they seem designed to cycle charge, but they're also very good in sustained combat. So we'll see how Fistek uses them. They're also pretty good at gooning characters, and even against crabs, they're not like great against crabs and big monsters, but they still have enough AP that in the late game, they could help finish off a big monster or something like that.
So we've taken a look at some of the ethereal units who have physical resistance, and we've mentioned ward saves or the damage resistance that the Black Coach gets. What's the difference between damage resistance and physical resistance?
Yeah, so ward save is indicated with like a golden shield icon, and that is damage. It prevents damage from all damage types, including magic, including physical. Physical resist, as the name would infer, just prevents physical damage, so things that don't do magic damage. Now the battle is going to be raging on here. The front line of Fistek, the Konigstein Stalkers, are going to be engaging with the deckhand mobs, and the Flying Taco is going to be attempting to make his valiant coast hold here, as Luther Harkin is inundated up in the sky with some Fellbats, which is a really good idea. It'll definitely muck him up and keep him from being as effective.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a small amount of points to pay too, right? To kind of keep him invested in that air fight. Isabella is a little bit more mobile than that dragon there, the Terrorgeist, so she can get Terrorgeist, so she can get in and out of that fight, just kind of pulling him around. But look at that crab, man! That crab is just slapping things around. It is rolling all over the Vampire Coast front line with the chill rates just right behind it. It's chill guys. Those are just the standard hex rates.
Yeah, no worries. The Rotting Leviathan has come back to the center engagement here, and it looks like it's going to be going after Black Coaches, which is probably the best bet. Luther Harkin, though, is just manhandling up here in the sky, doing so much damage against Lady Karstein. However, Lady Karstein does have the Blood Chalice, and that gives basically a free massive regrowth. So, though Lady Karstein has been losing this duel to Luther Harkin, she is able to use her Blood Chalice, which does have multiple charges, to actually essentially reanimate her health and normalize that fight. But I still think Luther Harkin is probably going to win this air fight. He's just insanely powerful and certainly can focus down Lady Karstein.
Oh yeah, I mean, you don't really get to see a really cool undead fight like this, where it's just a mass of skeletons and zombies and specters. I said specters intentionally that time.
I mean, it works though, dude. It's all fair
it was
play.
Totally intended.
So there's a couple options for what Luther Harkin could do. Since he's being mucked up so much here in the sky, what I would probably want to do with Luther Harkin is maybe land in combat. And right as I say that, Flying Taco lands in combat here, which is going to pull the Fellbats down into combat, and the Fellbats could potentially be taking big damage. And Luther Harkin is a very good gooning character. Going after the Black Coach here, I think, is certainly a good play. But I think the Vampires and Fistek are currently winning this fight. Obviously, the zombie deckhand mobs aren't trading well with the Crypt Ghouls, and Luther Harkin has been really just busy this time, just fighting chaff units basically up in the sky.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot, right? We've seen, hey, I've got a flying lord, I'm outnumbered in the sky, or there's at least just chaff units just bothering me. I'm going to land to force those chaff units to follow me and get picked off. Like, we've seen this a lot of times where you use the ability to basically force that engagement onto the ground to kind of pull stuff off of you. But like you said, man, Fistek is getting now a full surround with everything as those zombies just kind of get eaten up by the ghouls, expertly pushing their way through all those deckhand mobs.
And you can see here the Vampire Fleet Captain is also going down to the dreaded double Black Coaches you like to...
double coach.
It's not just one, it's 2 Black Coaches. And the Rotting Leviathan is doing some work. There's a little bit of Lamprey's Revenge support, but The only way I can really see the Flying Taco coming back in this game is if Luther Harkin is able to hard carry. Like, if Luther can perhaps, get these Fellbats and maybe take out Isabella von Karstein, force her into a bad engagement, he might be able to carry this. But yeah, this is the death knell here for the Vampire Coast. Is Flying Taco does lose his Vampire Fleet Captain. Banshees are exceptional assassins and really good against armored monsters like this too. Yeah, that good old prison shank there. Now she's going to be going after the Leviathan.
1, 2, 3, drop it and walk.
Yeah, I think it's looking pretty grim for the Taco, man. Fistek coming in and, with a very solid build, which is good against both the gun line as well as a monster spam build like this, and showing his prowess here with the Vampire Counts.
I gotta be honest with you. I didn't think the Isabella double cave bat combo like this would be as effective. I mean, they're really doing a really good job of chipping away at Luther over time, and like you said, the Blood Chalice is such a heavy heal. It's like 2,600 health, and I think it's got 2 or 3 charges, and it's just been able to keep Isabella topped off, or at least at 50% health. She can also heal with Invocation to Heck as well, but really Luther Harkin is pretty limited in his ability to stay topped off this entire time. His pistol is great. It does do that recharge here, but I mean, look how using the Master of Bewilderment? Master of Bewilderment?
Beguilement.
Beguilement, there it is. Get that reduction to melee attack too, so he's not able to even hit into Isabella hard enough. So I really think that double Cave Bat Isabella play was pretty awesome.
Yeah, the Fellbats with Lady Karstein, certainly a very good combo to shut down Luther Harkin up in the sky. On top of that, Lady Karstein is really, really powerful. If you guys take a look here at the post-battle screen. Lady Karstein is really good with Banshees because Banshees have a relatively low HP pool, in exchange, of course, for their ethereal status. But getting 2 free massive heals on Banshees is so cost-effective because a Vampire Coast army without magic is going to have to literally just work itself to the bone to kill a Banshee. But then suddenly, with the Blood Chalice that Isabella brings to the table, you can heal them back up to full health and mitigate all that damage. And yeah, it was just a good build by Fistek, good play. You can see the little Crypt Ghouls, the little Golems did some good work, and the Black Coaches, great value on them, 1,100 here and 1,400 here. Definitely did their work, and a very interesting pick of seeing Depth Guard with polearms here. I
didn't even see the Depth Guard in there.
I saw them earlier, but I wasn't sure if they were the regular variant. They've been a unit that have often been considered to be pretty terrible in competitive multiplayer, but I believe they got some minor combat buffs in this particular patch, but they seem to not really pay for themselves, as Black Coaches are basically a hard counter against them.
And is it because of their extremely high cost versus low unit count, so it makes them a little bit easier to kind of knock around?
So their damage output is decent. If you, in a vacuum, put Depth Guard with polearms against a monstrous unit of any type, they will kill it. But the issue being is Depth Guard have a relatively low model count, low HP pool. So what you do against Depth Guard polearms is you just inundate them with skeletons or zombie summons, and then from there, the halberds are going to be wasting their attack animations on the chaff while they're getting rode over by Black Coaches and just not being able to focus the targets they want. So ultimately, the Depth Guard pick, I don't think paid for itself. The monsters did okay, of course, but at the end of the day, Fistek's Flying Goon Squad plus all of his little angry Golem Goon Squad were able to do some great value. So that is game 1. So Fistek is going to be going up 1-0 here in the series, of course, the best of 3. And now we will see here in game 2 if the Flying Taco can break the curse of the 2-0s today and come back and make this a rubber match. So it is going to be Flying Taco this game on the Vampire Counts against Fistek's Bretonia. Should be quite a bit of fun, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Fistek is another new face to the Everchosen Invitational. Flying Taco has competed in plenty of them before. So when we go into tomorrow, we're looking at pretty much all familiar faces. Fistek might be our first new face in those semifinals.
Yeah, Flying Taco, it's a pretty interesting story, actually. So Hyale Nale, who was in the top 4 of the previous Everchosen, wasn't able to attend this one. So instead of having 4 qualifiers, we had to have 5. So in the 5th qualifier, which ended up being my Eternal Challenger League, Flying Taco qualified in my ECL. But guess who he qualified against? He played Fistek right here in the grand finals of my qualifier and actually won that series 3-0 in a best of 5. He swept the series. So Fistek is back for a little bit of vengeance here. He was able to win the first game, and Fistek, of course, I believe qualified in either Aerocrastics or My Son Herbert Walker's. I can't quite remember which one it was, but yeah, great tenacity for sure, because of course he didn't win in my qualifier, then he came back and requalified through another one of the later qualifiers and was able to do very well for himself. So Bretonia versus Vampire Counts, they probably, clash a little bit in lore, right?
Oh, all the time. And if you guys are listening to all this wondering, hey, qualifiers, multiplayer, what is this stuff? You can get involved in the multiplayer scene on Turin's channel. Head on over to Turin's YouTube channel. You can go over to Aerocrastic, to my son Herbert Walker, and Dov Plays. Each and every one of them held qualifiers to create the round of 8 that we have before you. It's a really awesome competitive multiplayer scene, and everyone's very helpful. So if you do want to get involved in it, you can even ask people directly like Falcon, hey, help me, teach me. And he's really good at teaching me. He's taught me stuff. So please go ahead on over to their YouTube channels, get involved in the multiplayer scene. It's a really supportive community, and you too can be a member here of the Everchosen Invitational, and it's how you get involved in those Eternal Challenger leagues. You get involved in those, and that's how you get into the qualifier matches for the Everchosen. But yes, Bretonnia and the Vampire Counts have just kind of had so many forays back and forth throughout the lore, especially when you look at stuff like Malbod, which is the Black Knight, and his civil war, more or less, against Leon Leoncoeur. Like, you have such a huge presence of, it's like they're the ultimate antithesis of each other, right? When you're looking at Bretonnia and what are these guys called? The Vampire Counts. It's not as prestigious as the Vampire Wars, which was against Empire, but still, it's
I suppose the irony of it is that like both vampires and Bretonnia treat their lower class like
it's a feudal system.
They treat them both horribly, right? Like the vampire thralls are just like suffering, and the peasants are suffering. So I suppose they have that in common. But one of my favorite pieces of art and all time in Warhammer Fantasy, it shows like a Grail Knight and like a Blood Knight like riding side by side and like battling each other from horseback. I think that is like one of the coolest art pieces. Like when I saw that, I was like, dude, I want to play Bretonnia and I want to play Blood Knights. They're so cool for sure.
The Blood Knight has like a mace or something, right? And the Bretonnian's got a glowing sword.
I don't recall that detail. I think the one I'm thinking of, they have like lances, like they're like coming at each other like in a lance. Yeah, I don't know.
It's still just amazing. Like it's still just probably it's just the quintessential knight on knight stuff. But one's evil and one's good. It's so cool.
And what's really neat about that, like kind of on that subject, is that in this matchup, not only is that how it's done in lore, but pretty much every single time you see Vampire Counts against Bretonnia, it's going to be like 3 Blood Knights fighting like 3 Grail Knights. Just these epic, lances, couched charges. And now, on that note, we are jumping into the battle. Would you like to talk about the Vampire Counts here?
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, just going off what you just said, you're going to see 3 units of Blood Knights here. It's one of the only other things in the army that can bring reliable high anti-large damage. So we're going to see 3 units of those Blood Knights. Another black coach sneaking in the background there. I see you, buddy.
Dude, look who it is. Look.
Oh, Vlad von Karstein himself, looking to just bring he's going to have people kiss the ring for sure.
Dude, look how cool he is.
Dude, and he's supported by 2 White Kings too. Like, look at those guys. Like, look at the Death Squad there.
It's really
going to
cool.
be... Oh, the Paladin.
What's going on here?
Diving.
What is this play?
This Pegasus has gone wild.
So Fistek charges in with the Paladin. He's very lucky he didn't take damage back, and that Flying Taco didn't have the cav nearby. But for Fistek's army, he's got double Paladin. He's got... super risky, brother. Royal Hippo Knights, looks like in the tree line he has some peasants hidden, and for his main battle line, it's going to be just mainly chaff units. Just a horde of unwashed Bretonnians with some questing knights lurking in the trees. So no Grail Knights. Questing Knights arguably, though, have better dual purpose because they have better AP than Grail Knights. So they're going to be a little bit more efficient against like Graveguard and Infantry, and also, of course, do AP against the armor of the Blood Knights. So,
and you do get the Champions of Quenelle, which are essentially like a discount Grail Knight, correct? They're the Knights of the Realm with flaming attacks?
No, they have anti-large.
Oh, those are the Questing Knights. I'm sorry. I was thinking of the Regiment of Renown Knights of the Realm.
Yeah, and they're very good. The Companions, as far as like cav-to-cav fighting, probably would trade better than a Grail Knight would against Blood Knights, but they're an ROR unit. You can only have one, and currently it looks like Fistek is like looking for freebies right now. He's like flying overhead with his Hippo Knights and his Paladins, and he's just like kind of looking to see if he can pick off models here and there.
He's
and
bullying
you can see
him. Look at him.
Yeah, it's very, very aggressive here. Very risky, but obviously this is something he's probably practiced and is very efficient at kind of getting these little gooning strikes before the battle begins. But
so
looks like the peasants and zombies, man. It's time.
So one thing with vampires, especially with the Depth Guard from Vampire Coast, is that they have hunger. So as they stay in combat and they do damage, it heals them. Now, Blood Knights have Frenzy. They do not have hunger, correct?
Yeah, the Blood Knights do have Frenzy, correct. And they do not have the hunger, but they can be healed by Invocation of the Heck and these other assets like that. So certainly not bad. And
big old charge there from those. Yep, right into those Skeleton Warriors, bulldozing them over. Who is their lord? Is that
It's going to be Fey Enchantress on Unicorn, which is a good choice. Undead often bring hordes of cheap infantry, so Fey Enchantress is really, really capable of, obviously draining them down with her Mists of the Lady effect, which does do damage over time. So it's a very, very good countermeasure there. Now Blood Knight's charging into the Peasant Mobs, overextending a little bit, but oh no, Fistek might have thrown the game here as the Fey Enchantress is being surrounded. If Fey Enchantress dies here, Fistek is going to get karate chopped super hard. He'll be without healing, he'll be without the Mortal Ascension effect, and these little greedy pokes he's had obviously have done a little bit of poking value, but he's also paid the Troll Toll in a way. But oh my god, the Fey Enchantress is escaping! Look, she's getting away!
Yeah, that Armored Hippogriff charge in there really helped him out because they basically added their mass into it and they helped physically push her out of that engagement. She was capsized there. She had the White Kings who have heroic killing blow, so they were able to push out of that, and she's just now at the edge of this battle, but those Blood Knights are getting right back at it, and she's now back in the danger zone again.
Yeah, it was a risky engagement here for Fistek for sure. I mean, because he basically committed with the Hippogriff Knights and the rest of his army just in a panic response. I don't think that was his intended play. He just wanted to save the Fey Enchantress, right? So even if, even if the Fey Enchantress does survive here, he's going to end up paying a Troll Toll of sorts because his Hippo Knights are trapped in Skeleton Spears now, and the Vampires have really kind of mucked up this Bretonnian advance.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing when you get these big oversteps like that. You do have to sacrifice some of your tactics or some of your big units to try and push out and create stability. Like right now, he's trying to come back from that. Those Hippo Knights are completely gone for the most part. They're getting completely destroyed by the Blood Knights, but Fey Enchantress is out of it. The Paladins are out of it. For the most part, the rest of the army is still in decent enough health that he might be able to fight back just fine. But that was a very scary moment for him.
Absolutely. That was a necessary play, though, because with the Fey Enchantress being gone, I think the game was just objectively over.
Agreed.
But now that she is back, I mean, the Hippogriff Knights are a 2,000 gold investment, but it wasn't like that was a completely one-sided trade.
Right.
The Blood Knights of Flying Taco are all at about half health, give or take, but now they're going to be able to ride down these Questing Knights most likely. But you also have to remember, the Vampire Count build is a little bit slower. Vlad von Karstein isn't, a flying Blood Dragon Lord. He's going to have to walk it over, so the Vampires have to be really careful to not overextend their forces without their leadership here.
So help me here. In the decision to bring Peasant Bowmen, why would you not bring one or two Peasant Bowmen with poison and or fire damage when you're fighting against this?
I think it's just a cost-effectiveness thing. I think he was probably pretty tight on his build expense, but he does have one poison arrow here. You can see the Peasant Bowman in the back. And that's all you need. You don't need multiple poison archers, but this is a really close game. We have a bit of a pit fight here as the Peasant Mobs are being trampled by these zombies, and the White Kings and Vlad are all in relatively good shape. It's just an incredibly back-and-forth fight, honestly. And you guys can see that reflected in the bounce of power. It's pretty darn even here. Fistek is charging through and buffering pretty well with his Peasant Mobs, and both archers are now functional and shooting, not being disrupted at all, so the Vampire Counts are also taking that steady, consistent fire here, which is probably not that fun for them.
Yeah, and if you are new to the game here, anytime we talk about that balance of power, it's that bar at the top that's kind of ebbing and flowing left and right. That will fluctuate depending on units' health, their morale, even the ammunition of range units. So pretty much the constant combat effectiveness of a unit will affect that balance of power bar.
Absolutely, my friend. And now it looks like for the first time in the game, the Flying Taco is flying through the forces of the Bretonnians and is doing good damage. He's pulled a little bit ahead on the balance of power, but as soon as I say that, it goes right back to the middle, just showing how truly contested this game is. And though the Vampires are, arguably one of the kings of the blob fight, like in this situation here, you also have to remember the Fey Enchantress is the queen of blob fights, and she is able to just drain down those Blood Knights, drain down the chaff units. Nice little scab scrape going down there from one of the White Kings, but ultimately it looks like Fistek might be able to pull this blob fight out. I don't know how much support he has here.
What I think has been really impressive from Fistek is that unit of Peasant Bowmen on the side there on the left has just been firing into that rightmost unit of Blood Knights the entire game. And Peasant Bowmen, they don't have a massive amount of AP damage. They don't do themselves a ton of missile damage, but it's the same thing with Beastmen and their Raiders. It's just the constant ticking of health the entire game, unmitigated. No one's been over there to even threaten them. Their health is completely fine. Their leadership is completely fine. And being able to drain them with the Fey Enchantress, getting little picks off with that Paladin, it has added up. Like, take a look. Both those units of Blood Knights are now really in bad shape.
Yeah, they're very, very tattered for sure. And the Fey Enchantress draining down the chaff units is going to help them win that grindy fight potentially. But another thing to consider is that the leadership kit of the Vampire Counts and Flying Taco is very strong. Vlad and both White Kings are very healthy, and Vlad, of course, would be able to defeat the Paladins quite handedly, and the White Kings will probably have a relatively even trade in that respect, but got to be careful not to overextend here. There's a lot of scary Questing Knights. Questing Knights do have good, consistent AP values to punch through White Kings, and it looks like the Vampires are more or less out of support. These Blood Knights are down for the count. If we really zoom out, it looks like there might be some zombies and Graveguard over here kind of waddling their way back in, but now it looks like the Vampires are more or less truly surrounded, with the exception of some zombie summons here.
Yeah, I mean, going exactly, it's like you just said what was going to happen. It looks like Fistek said, like, okay, I realized that leadership pocket is still intact. I have to keep the heavy hitting units that are actually going to threaten into it in somewhat decent health, and that's why he committed the Paladins and the Fey Enchantress and Spearmen onto the Blood Knights and not onto anything else. Like, he just kind of kept his Knights healthy and away, didn't take any anti-large damage from those Blood Knights, and just kind of used them to fight against the White Kings.
And what's going to happen here is that Fistek, of course, sees that these Graveguard are advancing, and if the Graveguard are able to unify with the leadership of the Vampire Count, so if these Graveguard can come and stand with Vlad and the White Kings, for example, that's going to be a huge problem for Bretonnia. So in this case, the Questing Knights and some of these unwashed peasants are going to be charging in and actually taking the not Questing Knights down, but the Graveguard down without their leadership support. So that's really nice, taking advantage of the fact that Flying Taco did invest in a fair amount of slow foot characters, right? Punish him. Bretonnia is a mobile faction. Don't give him that satisfying fight he wants over here.
Right. And I think that's such a big thing when it comes to Vampire Counts, is trying to push apart that leadership. If you can kill it, awesome, right? If you can knock out Vlad from the start, even better. But trying to keep their leadership fractured and apart from each other so they can't use their numbers against each other or coalesce to get a good invocation to heck on them, to get a good heal across 4 units. Like, using those things to pick them apart is really going to be the name of the game.
Absolutely, and now it's just a grind at this point. So basically it's going to be the double White Kings and Vlad, and Vlad is quite good at this. One thing that obviously the Bretonians really have going for them is the fact that Questing Knights are immune to psychology, so they're not going to be terror routed off by Vlad. But that's not so much the case for the peasants who are being terror routed here. So it's not completely over yet. But Flying Taco would have to get some pretty good isolations and gooning attempts in here. Vlad still could pull this game out, but man, the Fey Enchantress Drain has just been so good this game, and I'm really eager after this game is over to see the accrued value. But look at that, the Paladin actually gets wavered and broken here.
Yeah, I was going to say he's terrified, so he'll come back, but he was in there with both of those White Kings, and those guys can really, really do a heavy karate chop fast. So you can see that Flying Taco did a quick zombie summon there, and that's going to help insulate that backline so things don't surround too heavily. When you do have surround, it does give a little leadership penalty there. But it's really just going to be a matter of using units to just pick away at these things rather than going all in, and hopefully not getting too swarmed up with the Fey Enchantress getting killed or the Paladins getting killed. It's just kind of taking his time to pick stuff apart.
And look at this. Right here, Vlad is actually taking out that other Paladin. Now, a big question for the Vampires, and I think one way they could potentially get back in this game, is if they had an Invocation to Heck that hit all 3 of these characters. But I think he's probably a little bit tight on Winds of Magic. Vlad, unlike his son, Manfred's his son, right?
No, it's not like an actual like biological son.
Okay, so it's just like a bloodline thing. Okay, well, his good pal Manfred there doesn't have the best Winds of Magic regeneration. So Vlad is going to have to grind it out the old-fashioned way, and it looks like the Bretonians probably will do it. You can see here what Fistek is doing by leaving all these units in a circle. He's letting them rest. If you look at the tooltips, you can see they're very tired, exhausted, winded, etc., etc. So by letting them sit there and not waste their energy in this blob fight,
right,
he's able to get his value back there. But that looks like it's going to be another 2-0. Fistek actually avenging his loss in the ECL Grand Finals against Flying Taco with a 2-0 win there. Is going to be advancing tomorrow to face Aerocrest.
Well, and I think that was pretty impressive right there, right? Like, those were 2 pretty fun fights. Like, I think you had a really creative build with the Vampire Coast and Vampire Counts, and this one was a pretty hefty one. Like, Fistek almost lost it in the beginning portion right there. Like, Flying Taco capitalized really well.
I think though Vlad is a much better pick now. I think that the build of Flying Taco didn't synergize as well with Vlad. They're both builds that, have Blood Knights, they have mobility. You're going to have to be in multiple areas of the battlefield. And Vlad didn't seem to be able to kind of accentuate the strength of the Blood Knights as much as the Fey Enchantress was able to support the Questing Knights. And I think that was a pretty big variable for sure. Whereas the old school Blood Dragon Lord with the Helm of Discord could have been nuking the combat stats of the Questing Knights while also supporting on his dragon. Granted, Vlad is very powerful and did pretty well for himself in terms of his damage accrued. I think more traditional Vampire Lord against Bretonnia, unless you build for Vlad and like build a Helm's Deep kind of blobby build, they would have been a better choice. Some of the old school lords, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think Vlad is a cool thing to bring here, and I think it's a very unique choice. But I 100% agree with you on that, man. I think that Blood Dragon is such a strong lord and can just do so much damage. It's oof.
So the Blood Knights did good. They more or less paid for themselves. 1999 here, 1651 here, 927 there. Black Coach didn't do too much. Man, that Black Coach did nothing this game. Look at that. You got freaking 182 gold back. That is a pretty brutal beating those Bretonnian Paladins must have given that thing. I think the Black Coach actually died in the beginning fight when the Fey Enchantress was engaged. I think the two Paladins went after it. So that pretty much negated the value that Taco was able to get by picking off the Royal Hippogriff Knights. And yeah, Questing Knights did good also. Not as good as the Blood Knights, though, but it seems like the Bretonnian Peasant Archers, yeah, look at that, 993 and 1237 on those Peasant Archers, man.
That's the one that was just chipping the whole time, man. He was the one that did not have pox arrows was just chipping the entire time into those Blood Knights.
It's Value City, man. So with that, Fistek is going to be advancing on to face Aerocrastic tomorrow in a best of 3 in the round of 4. So let us go ahead, perhaps, and take a look at the brackets. Would you like to take us through tomorrow's matchups, my friend?
I would love to. So for the brackets tomorrow, with our semifinals, it looks like we're going to be seeing Falcon versus Loxlon Soothsayer, followed by Aerocrastic versus Fistek. That's going to culminate in our final that we're going to be seeing here. Whoever squares off, that is going to be a best of 5? 5.
So the best of 3s, and then the grand finals will be best of 5, and third place will be best of 3.
There we go. Okay, so we're going to have 3 best of 3 matches tomorrow, followed by a best of 5. We have a halftime show by Indie Pride coming out tomorrow as well from Milk and Cookies Total War, so be on the lookout for that. That'll be in between our final and third place rounds. But Falcon and Loxlon Soothsayer, that's going to be a really interesting one. I'm actually, though, most excited for Aerocrastic versus Fistek because this is a new face in that semifinal. How do you think that that's going to go?
Oh man, it's so hard to predict, obviously, like, because, you know, just a month ago, we saw Flying Taco 3-0 Fistek in a best of 5 in a very dominant fashion. And then, you know, any given Sunday, right, Fistek comes back, perhaps he's been practicing, experimenting with new builds, really doing his research, and he's able to win 2-0 and have a very good performance. Falcon versus Soothsayer obviously is going to be a rematch of an Everchosen Grand Final from before, which did go to Game 5. And they've competed quite a bit in various community tournaments. They're both individuals who pretty much always make it to the top 4 of their respective tournaments. And, you know, same goes with Aerocrastic and Fistek. They're players who've had pretty consistent success in the tournament scene. So definitely looking forward to seeing them face off tomorrow. It's going to be quite a bit of fun. Man. Very hyped. I hope we get to see, because honestly, I feel like Sisters of Twilight, Dryka, and Throt the Unclean, they're all very competitive picks. But understandably, since in a high stakes tournament like this, players are going to go for their comfort picks that they've been practicing for months. But I would be quite eager to see some of those new characters in action because, man, oh man, they are actually very strong in multiplayer.
Yeah, especially the combination of Throt, so stuff like the Packmaster, just getting so much anti-large, and the Brood Horrors are so vile.
Yeah,
so,
they're gross.
Plenty of fun. What?
95 speed on those rats, man. They're super swift.
Dude, they're so fast, and they regenerate too, so you've got so many little tricks up the sleeves with the Packmaster and with Throt.
The funniest thing is like when
his Lord, what did you call him? His unclean royalty?
I can't remember.
The Royal Wee.
That was a long time ago, but yeah, definitely a great set of games today. All 2-0, mind you, very dominant games. But we will be back tomorrow with best of 3s and a best of 5, and of course a third place match and the glorious showcase battle from none other than Milk and Cookies Total War, which should be quite a bit of fun. But again, guys, thank you all for joining today. It was an absolute blast. This is the Everchosen, and we will be back tomorrow with more games. Ryan, any closing thoughts?
I do. So we'll be back here tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time or 3 p.m. GMT. There's also plenty of sales and stuff going on. Remember, guys, Twisted and the Twilight comes out December 3rd, where you can play with Dryka, you can play with Nastra and Arahan, with Throt the Unclean, all the new units that are coming alongside them as well. And as far as the Steam sale, you have the Steam Autumn sale, which is going to get you 50, 75%, depending on what you're looking at. I think Total War Warhammer 1 is 75% off, and the Realm of the Wood Elves is 50% off. So if you want to take advantage of any of those Steam sales going on, go ahead and head on over to Steam, and you can do so. That way you can play Twisted and Twilight's FLCs, and there are many variations depending on which you own. But I think outside of that, man, we'll see you guys here tomorrow. 3 p.m. GMT, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. A huge shout out to ProMod, who is doing this alongside us. They're our third party who's been doing it. A huge shout out to all the competitors who have been playing so far and the ones that will play tomorrow. And you know what? A huge shout out to my bro Turin, who is alongside me digitally and helping me out in the Everchosen. I said the Vampire Coast Invitational, the Everchosen Invitational.
It's no longer an invitational, just Everchosen.
The
now.
Everchosen Qualified Invitational.
Sounds good, man. Cheers. It's a pleasure as well.
Thanks, guys.
Darkness gathers with the setting sun. Foul abominations gnaw at our mother's roots. Consume with endless hunger. But just as one season brings death, a new shall bring life.